Namaskar. It is a pleasure to welcome you all to this final event of the India Rivers Week 2021. As you know, the India Rivers Week is an annual event organized by India Rivers Forum's Steering Committee, which consists of WWF India, INTAC, the South Asia Network on Dams, Rivers and People, Toxics Link, the Peace Institute, People Science Institute, Veditam, Society for Promoting Participative Ecosystem Management, or SOPICOM, Ashoka Trust for Research on Ecology and Environment, and the Indian Institute of Human Settlements. So on behalf of all of these organizations of the steering committee, I welcome you to this final event. The India Rivers Week was started in 2014. And we're proud that despite the challenges of the COVID pandemic in the last 2 years, we've managed to organize this annual program without a break, making this year's event the 8th in the series. And while our initial years were devoted to more broad-ranging issues like rivers in crisis and the health of rivers, in recent years, we've begun to focus more on specific issues, such as the rejuvenation of the Ganga and how sand mining is killing our rivers. You'll find more information about these past events on our website and on the SandRep website as well. This year too, we are focused on an issue that is vital to the livelihoods of millions of people, that is the state of our rivers, inland fisheries, and fishers. For millennia, fish have symbolized the life and health of rivers. For millennia, they have also fed and sustained communities living along their banks. But today, these enduring relationships based on the bounty of nature have run into troubled waters. River flows have been altered, their waters polluted. Those who have caught fish for a living, and here we count the poorest people in our society, they have seen their lifelines disappear. We have not taken this immense and grievous loss into account. Even though it affects the survival of people and of rivers, we have no good measure of this crisis, nor methods for how to address it. So we inaugurated this year's Rivers Forum by focusing on river pollution and its impacts on fisheries and fishers. We followed this up with a detailed analysis of the adverse impacts of structures like on rivers like dams, barrages, and embankments. We then explored how good data and science can help inform advocacy around these issues. And we looked at how political economy has influenced actions on rivers and fisheries. We hope finally we focus on governance issues and the possible ways forward. We hope that these 5 discussions will generate enough food for thought and action on the subject of fisheries and fishers, which are often forgotten whenever the question of river health is discussed. Finally, a highlight of the India Rivers Week is always the announcement of the Bhagirath Prayas Samman and the Anupam Mishra Memorial Medal. With the Bhagirath Prayas Samman, we honor and celebrate the quiet, untiring efforts of people and organizations around the country to keep rivers alive and to defend the rights of those who depend on rivers. With the Anupam Mishra Memorial Medal, we recognize journalists and other media professionals who, through their work, create awareness and understanding of the issues facing rivers. Today, too, we look forward to the announcement of these 2 awards. I welcome you once again to this event, and I'm sure that you will find it enriching as well as inspiring. Thank you. Over now to Meher.
Good evening. I'll start by sharing a presentation on the journey of the BPS and AMM awards from the year in which they were initiated. I'll just take a moment. The Bhagirath, Prayas, Samman, and Anupam Mishra Memorial Medal journey so far. Let me begin with telling you a little bit about Anupam Mishra Memorial Medal and the Bhagirath, Prayas, Samman. In memory of late Shri Anupam Mishra ji, a true Gandhian and a gifted writer, speaker, and a journalist whose in-depth research into little-known community conservation initiatives inspired many in India and abroad to follow suit. The award, constituted in 2017, aims to celebrate journalists and media professionals who have established an exceptional body of credible work on various aspects of rivers, leading to change in behavior, public discourse, law, and policy. The Bhagirath Prayas Samman, an award that was constituted in 2014, was led by late Shri Anupam Mishra ji as the chair of the jury. The BPS aims to recognize the unsung heroes for their outstanding and sustained efforts towards protecting and conserving rivers. Our esteemed jury members are Shri Shashi Shekharji, IAS, former Secretary, Ministry of Water Resources, River Development and Ganga Rejuvenation, Dr. Amita Bhaviskar, Ashoka University, Dr. S. Janak Rajan, Professor Emeritus, Madras Institute of Development Studies, Shri Abhilash Khandekar, Senior Journalist, Shri S. Vishwanath, BPS Award winner 2018 from Bangalore, Shri Himanshu Thakkarji from Sandarbh and member organizing committee IRW. Let me give you a little bit of insight into the states and the issues that these awards have touched upon. There have been 12 states and 12 rivers, and we have covered everything from issues on land, forest, water management, participatory groundwater management for reviving rivers, raising debate on environmental flows and hydropower, legal activism against fragmentation of rivers by dams and infrastructure, fights against pollution, alternate approaches for flood management, and combining stakeholder engagement to on-ground action. We have also looked at issues about linking groundwater, rainwater, rivers, and lakes, river journalism, facilitating public awareness and advocacy. We'll take you through a quick journey of our winners since 2014 when BPS started. Shri Akhil Gogoi from Assam, late Dr. Lata Anantha from Kerala, Koel Karo Jan Sangathan Jharkhand, Shri Sachinanand Bharti from Uttarakhand, Shri Emmanuel Theophilus from Uttarakhand, Sambhav Trust from Rajasthan, Save Mon Region Foundation, Arunachal Pradesh, 2016, Dr. Dinesh Mishra from Bihar, Shri Ritvik Datta from India, Citizens Corner from Citizens Concern for Dams and Development from Manipur, Himdar Environment Research and Action Collective, Himachal Pradesh, 2017, Shri Mahavir Sukarlai from Rajasthan, Meenachil Nadi Samrakshan Samiti from Kerala, in 2018, Shri S. Vishwanath from Karnataka, 2019, Shri Mushtaqim from Uttar Pradesh, 2020, we had Shri Sarang Yadvarkar and Jeevit Nadi Living River Foundation. Now, as you have seen, BPS is an award that is given both to individuals and organizations. In some years, we've had a mix of both, whereas in some years, it may be just individuals. This is an overview. We have had 19 winners so far, covering 11 rivers, lakes, wetlands across 11 states. These are some of the key thematic areas and states where the award winners are from. And the key thematics are community mobilization and collective action, research, awareness and advocacy, and litigation. Moving on to our Anupam Mishra Memorial Medal, as we had covered, this is for people who are journalists. In 2017, when the award first started, Ms. Aarti Kumar Rao was the first winner of this very prestigious medal. In 2018, Shri Arun Tiwari ji won this medal. And last year, our winner was Shri Makran Purohit. We have had 3 winners so far, and we will be announcing our winners for this year as well. Thank you for your time. We will now move on to announcing the winners for BPS and for the Anupam Mishra Memorial Medal. Our winner for the BPS, I'll be sharing their citation. Our first winner is Shri Rajkumar Sinha ji. Please allow me a moment to share his citation and read it out to you. The organizing committee of the India Rivers Week has great pleasure in awarding the Bhagirath Prayas Samman 2021 to Shri Rajkumar Sinha in appreciation of his dedicated work as part of the Bargi Bandh, Vistapit Evam Prabhavit Sangh, to protect the Narmada River and defend the lives and livelihoods of communities along its banks. For more than 30 years, Rajkumar Sinha has quietly devoted himself to protecting the upper reaches of the Narmada River from destructive projects and fighting for justice for the communities affected by the Bargi Dam. Despite challenges and setbacks, Sinha has been indefatigable in his efforts to secure justice for Adivasis, Dalits, and other marginalized groups. Together, they have succeeded in winning the right to cultivate the reservoir bed and fish in its waters. They have brought about better rehabilitation. They have ensured that the water of the Bargi Dam is used more fairly. With meager resources, but magnificent courage, Rajkumar Sinha has accomplished the difficult task of building a people's movement in the upper Narmada Basin. His continuing crusade has helped illuminate the vital links between rivers and people. His life and work are an inspiration for everyone who cares about rivers. It is our honor to recognize and celebrate Shri Rajkumar Sinha's unsung Bhagirath Prayas to protect the river, people, and environment in the upper Narmada River Basin in Madhya Pradesh. I would request Sinha ji to please come and speak a few words in acceptance of this award. सिन्हा जी प्लीज आप कनेक्टेड हैं तो आप म्यूट पे हैं
जी हेलो
जी हम आपको सुन पा रहे हैं सिन्हा जी प्लीज कंटिन्यू
जी तो मैं नर्मदा घाटी में जो अलग अलग बांध बने हैं उसमें अपर नर्मदा के ऊपर जो बरगी बांध बना है उनके विस्थापित में 162 गांव विस्थापित हुए और उसमें से अधिकांशतः आदिवासी जमात के लोग थे और उन्हें पता नहीं था कि बांध से क्या हालात होंगे तो उनके पुनर्वास की लड़ाई 90 के दशक से शुरू हुआ और लगभग 12-15 साल तक उनके पुनर्वास का सरकार के साथ मिलकर के उनके पुनर्वास की कार्रवाई की गई और अभी वर्तमान में उसी बरगी बांध के जलग्रहण क्षेत्र में विस्थापित गांव में चुटका परमाणु परियोजना प्रस्तावित है जिसको लेकर के लगभग 12 साल से वहां के स्थानीय समुदाय संघर्ष कर रहे हैं उन संघर्षों में मैं उनके साथ हूं दूसरा अभी जो 29 बड़े बांध नर्मदा पे बनने थे उसमें से कुछ बांध फिर दोबारा शुरू हो रहे जो कि 3 मार्च 2016 को विधानसभा में मुख्यमंत्री ने इसे निरस्त किया था वो चालू हुआ है खास करके बसनिया राघवपुर अपर नर्मदा बहुत ये 3 बांधों की अभी प्रशासकीय मंजूरी मिल गई है और उस पर अभी सर्वे होना बाकी है उसको लेकर के स्थानीय जो आदिवासी समुदाय हैं उनके साथ चर्चा उनको जानकारी उपलब्ध कराना सरकार से आरटीआई से जो जानकारी मिली है और उसमें 2107 हेक्टेयर जंगल डूब रहा है तो नर्मदा की जो पूरी स्थिति है उसमें 41 सहायक नदियों में से आप देखें तो जो नर्मदा को में बूंद बूंद ला करके नर्मदा को सदा नीरा बनाती है, उस जो सहायक नदी है उनकी भी स्थिति गड़बड़ है, क्योंकि पूरे जलग्रहण क्षेत्र में बहुत भारी मात्रा में जंगल कटाई होने से इनमें पानी की मात्रा लगातार कम हो रहा है। तो और दूसरा जो नदियों में जो जबलपुर में जो अभी एक रिपोर्ट आई है, 136 MLD केवल जबलपुर शहरों का जो सीवेज है सो नर्मदा में मिलता है। ये जो पूरा का पूरी जो नर्मदा को में सीवेज कचरा डालने से लेकर के सारी चीजों को लेकर के एनजीटी के सारे ऑर्डर्स के बाद भी ये सब हो रहे हैं। जो जबलपुर के आसपास की डेयरी है तो उसको लेकर के भी काफी कुछ करने की जरूरत है, और खास करके जो नर्मदा पे चुटका परमाणु परियोजना बन रहा है उसको लेकर के लोगों को बंद करना। नीचे नर्मदा के बरगी के नीचे जो बांध है वहां पर बहुत सारे बांध, चिंकी बांध हैं, ऐसे बड़े बांध अभी वहां पे शुरू होने जा रहे हैं। एक तो विस्थापन के सवाल है, दूसरा वहाँ के जो पूरा के जो वहाँ के जो आदिवासी समुदाय हैं, वहाँ के जो मछुआरा समुदाय हैं, उनके रोजगार के भी सवाल हैं। उन सवालों को लेकर के हम लोग यहाँ पे लगातार काम कर रहे हैं, और लोगों को और इस पूरे काम को अकेला मैं नहीं, पूरे समुदाय उसमें शामिल है। पूरे हमारे जो साथी हैं जो इस तरह की चीजों के लिए, जैसे रेत खनन का मामला है उसको लेकर के जो साथी है, जहां आवाज उठाना है, बात करना है, लेकिन इस तरह के चीजों को रोकने के लिए एक विल पावर, जो पॉलिटिकल विल पावर है, वो सरकार के पास नहीं है, और वो सरकार के संरक्षण में हो रहा है। उसको रोकने के लिए अगर नदी को बचाना है तो इस तरह के जो पूरे रेत माफिया है उसको रोकना पड़ेगा, जो गैर कानूनी तरीके से नदियों का जो है सीने को छलनी कर रहे हैं, और पूरा जो कचरा है वो हम नदियों में डालते जा रहे हैं। तो एक लंबे संघर्ष की जरूरत है, और इसको बचाने की जरूरत है। जो हमारी जो नदी जो जहाँ पे सभ्यता विकसित हुआ है उसके अस्तित्व के संकट के साथ हमें जूझना पड़ेगा और उसको निकालना होगा। धन्यवाद।
धन्यवाद सिन्हा जी। अब हम अपना दूसरा BPS अवार्ड विनर अनाउंस करेंगे। हमारे अगले विनर है मेरा स्क्रीन विजिबल है?
हाँ, लेकिन इस पे राजकुमार जी का ही अभी आ रहा है। अच्छा, अब आ गया, करेक्ट। हाँ।
The organizing committee of the India Rivers Week has great pleasure in awarding the Bhagirath Prayas Samman 2021 to affected citizens of Teesta, ACT, in appreciation of their dedicated effort to bring together local communities to protect the river Teesta in Sikkim. For the Lepcha people in Sikkim's Zongo region, the forested mountains and valleys of the river Teesta are the sacred center of their culture and the source of all their living needs. Drawing upon this deep attachment, ACT has educated, engaged, and empowered people to challenge the cascades of hydropower projects that threaten this river and its tributaries. Over the last 2 decades, ACT has worked tirelessly to raise public awareness about the fragile geology and ecology of the Teesta Basin and how they will be affected by large projects. They have helped local community organizations in the Zongo region and beyond to come together and stand up against the destruction of the river. ACT has succeeded in stopping a number of destructive dam projects and challenging others. It has created widespread awareness about how dams can break the cherished bond between nature and communities in India's northeastern states. It has fostered a new generation of river stewards in a state where there were none before. The sustained initiative serves as a model and inspiration for others across Northeast India and elsewhere. It is our honor to recognize the exemplary efforts of the affected citizens of Teesta to protect the Teesta River Basin in Sikkim by revitalizing the relationship between the river and the communities. It is our honor to present this award to them, and I request them to please come and accept the award.
Am I audible?
Yes.
Yes.
Hi, all ladies and gentlemen in the panelists and all the attendees. I'm Gatso Lepcha, General Secretary of Affected Citizens of TISTA. Because the fact that you all must be amazed of that we are just around 15,000 people in the whole of the states, and we are the indigenous people of the small Himalayan state called Sikkim. I would like to, we as an ACT would like to thank organizer India Rivers Forum and the respected jury for considering us as a recipient of this prestigious Bhagirath Prayas Samman. But on the onset, I think I should keep it, make it clear, and from our small group as an indigenous people who worship nature and who's been fighting across the world, who has been fighting against the exploitation of our natural resources. I think I should make it clear that there are no losers today here in this forum. In fact, we all are winners. We all are winners who is trying to make things, trying to make difference to the coming generations. So anyone who has been nominated or who has applied for it, I think we all are winners here today. It just we are so thankful that you have made us one of the recipients of this prestigious award, and we are very thankful. The Tista River and its tributaries and everyone single life who lives in that river, in that water, we are thankful to all of you. We would like to dedicate this award to the founder member of ACT long time back when we were just a young people who were doing graduation. So these people, I should take the name of them: Ren Athup Lepcha, Mr. Chiten Lepcha, Mr. Penjang, Mr. Dawa Lepcha, etc., who are there, were there to ignite and to really inform us about what's going to happen to our rivers and to our forests and to our land and to our mountains. So I would like to thank them. Concerned Lepchas of Sikkim, I was by then the president of that youth organization of the young Lepcha youths in Gangtok. The monk bodies across the states, there was Sangha of Lepcha, Sangha of Zongu, which is monk bodies, because in Sikkim, the Tibetan, we follow the Tibetan Buddhism, which all is so connected with the nature worshipping. So I would like, because their support was, they had immense support to us, and they are still one of the strongest supporter of the whole movement. So I would like to thank all the Sangha and all the monk bodies of the region. Of course, the Lepchas, the indigenous Lepchas of Darjeeling Hills, the Kalimpong Lepchas, Lepcha bodies, they are all being part of this historic hunger strike movement, which was there in from 2007, 8, and 9. So there was a historic hunger strike movement of 3 long years, which eventually made the government of Sikkim to scrap 4 big dams inside the region. So I would like to thank them. And also I would like to take this opportunity to thank all the civil societies of Sikkim. To name few of them, which I remember now, are Sikkim Indigenous Bote Lepcha Apex Committee, SIPLAC. I would like to thank them. Save Sikkim, a bunch of young youth from the West Sikkim who has been fighting against the Rathong Chu and other rivers in Sikkim. I would also like to thank a young body of universities going students and people who are young youth who have just graduated and masters and have done PhD. So there's a body called Sikkim Progressive Youth Forum, who have always been in being one of the supporter and one of the strong supporter of us, and also the Sikkim Lepcha Youth Association and many more. I would also like to thank panchayats, the most important ingredient most important part of the people's movement, the panchayats of the regions, be it a Jila Panchayats or a member or a president of the thing, they have been really, really, really like rock solid. Women's group, we always believe that women are the one who has to lead the movement, because they are the mother, because no one love their kids and their kids' generation of futures more than the women's. So we are always proud of the women groups. The groups always there in front line whenever we have rally protests. They are the one who really boost up, and they are the one who is leading the movement. So we would really would like to thank them. And of course the youths of Zongo, I mean, in this webinar now presently, around most of a majority of our people who are attendees are all young students from class 12, 10th, and also the college students who are watching now this thing. They have been really inspirations to people like us who has been hanging around in this movement for more than decade and 18 years, I think. But these are the young people who has given us hope. Also the post hunger strike, and then the post after the hunger strike movement, all the members who are here today, I would like to thank them. We would like to dedicate this acknowledgement, this award to all of them. And also organizations from Northeast, all good friends from all the Northeastern regions who has been fighting same struggles across this Himalayan states, and they have been always been there behind us, and we have always been there. I think it's time we all come together. It's been such a wonderful journey. At the same time, it's difficult, and would like to appeal again to make it, because I'm sure in small state like Sikkim, the government and the agencies must be keeping eyes on this forum and this award ceremony. Also, I would like to appeal to the government of Sikkim that we are just tiny states. We have just less than 7,000 square kilometers of landmass, and I think we should think about the future of Sikkim, and and also my heart goes all to the what's happening in Laos Spiti right now, and solidarity to all the people in Himachal there, with Manshi and his group and her groups doing there. I think this is not about the Lepchas in Zongo, a tiny small group, or in Manipur or in Himachal. This is attack on the third pole, the Himalayas, the great Himalayas, which is one of the most fragile ecosystem of this mountain. So I would like to, also in the end, probably I'm being bit emotions, but because I just lost my very good friend who was young lawyer yesterday, and he was very much part of this whole historic hunger strike. So all the bygoners of ACT movement, we would like to dedicate this movement, this award to all of you, and thank you again to the Rivers Forum. We are much we are thankful to all of you, and probably hopefully some of the rivers in Sikkim will keep flowing freely for some more years. Thank you.
Thank you, team of ACT, and congratulations again. We'll now move on to the winners of the Anupam Mishra Memorial Medal, and I will share my screen for the citation. Our next winner is, sorry, just give me a moment. Abhay Mishra ji. The organizing committee of the India Rivers Week has great pleasure in awarding the Anupam Mishra Memorial Medal to Shri Abhay Mishra ji in appreciation of his outstanding work in bringing the cause of the Ganga and other rivers into the public eye through his journalism and other writings. For more than a decade, Abhay Mishra has reported in depth and with verve on the state of the Ganga, traveling several times from source to sea to observe and understand events and processes along its banks. His book, Dar Dar Gange, co-authored with Pankaj Ramendu, vividly portrays the conflicts and contradictions that beset this sacred river from Gangotri to Gangasagar. He has also creatively explored the likely rippling impact of a dam breach disaster in Mati Manas Chun, a work of speculative fiction rendered convincing by the careful research that underlies it. Mishra's multi-genre work has taken Hindi journalism in a new and exciting direction and has attracted a large readership. It is an honor to celebrate Abhay Mishra's creativity and commitment in enriching public discourse on the Ganga and other rivers by presenting him the Anupam Mishra Memorial Medal 2021. Congratulations, Mishra ji. We request you to please come and say a few words.
बहुत धन्यवाद इंडिया रिवर फोरम का और सभी सम्मानित सदस्यों का जिन्होंने मुझे इस लायक समझा, इस पुरस्कार के लायक समझा। अनुपम मिश्र जी के नाम पर पुरस्कार है, एक भावनात्मक लगाव है। 2006 में जब मैं दिल्ली आया था तो उनके बाद जब उनसे पहली मुलाकात हुई, उन्होंने पहली मुलाकात में ही मुझे प्रकृति का कैलेंडर समझाया कि प्रकृति का कैलेंडर हमारे आपके कैलेंडर की तरह नहीं चलता है। और वो जो गणित उन्होंने कैलेंडर का समझाया उसने मेरा ही गणित बदल दिया और तब से मैं नदी पर लिखने लगा, नदियों के बारे में सोचने लगा, उनको ही गुनने और बुनने की कोशिश करने लगा। बाकी सारी बातें मेहर जी ने बता ही दी हैं। चूंकि ये बहुत गर्व का क्षण है, सम्मान का क्षण है मेरे लिए। अनुपम जी की याद आना स्वाभाविक है। ये सम्मान उन्हीं ने इसे शुरुआत किया था और ये उनके नाम पर है, तो ये मेरे हृदय के बहुत करीब है। मैं इस मौके पे श्री राम बहादुर राय सर का भी धन्यवाद करूंगा, जो वरिष्ठ पत्रकार हैं राम बहादुर राय, और उन्होंने हमेशा गंगा नदियों से संबंधित विषयों को और संपादकों की तरह फिलर आइटम के तौर पर नहीं लिया। उन्होंने हमेशा पर्यावरण के मुद्दों को प्रमुखता से छापा और ये कारण रहे जिसकी वजह से हम इस काम में थोड़ा सा आगे बढ़ पाए। और एक पुरानी साथी जो ये कोरोना वेव उन्हें इस बार हमसे ले गई, द प्रिंट की रेणु अगाल, जिन्होंने बहुत प्रमुखता से पर्यावरण के मुद्दों पर मुझे लगातार मुझे प्रोत्साहित किया और लिखने के लिए कहा। और ये कारण है कि द प्रिंट में आज 100 से ज्यादा लेख छपे हैं। इसकी शुरुआत उन्होंने की थी। तो ये पुरस्कार, ये सम्मान जितना मेरा है उतना ही द प्रिंट की टीम का है, उतना ही बाकी मेरे सभी साथियों का है। और आप सभी का बहुत धन्यवाद। एक 30 सेकंड और इस बात को बताने के लिए लूंगा कि भविष्य में एक अभी वर्तमान में एक नदी सिलेबस बनाने पर काम कर रहे हैं मैं और मेरे साथी, कि गंगा पथ पर जो गांव हैं, जो छोटे सरकारी स्कूल हैं, यहाँ पर जो 11 से 15 साल 16 साल तक के जो बच्चे हैं, इनको ध्यान में रखकर एक छोटी पुस्तिका तैयार करने की कोशिश कर रहे हैं। ये उस तरह से नहीं रहेगी कि एक जनरल पर्यावरण के बारे में उनको इंफॉर्मेशन दे रहे हैं, बल्कि वो इस पर आधारित रहेगी कि जिस जगह वो रह रहे हैं वहाँ की नदी कैसी है, वहाँ की नदी की खास बात क्या है, क्यों हम अपनी नदी को सदियों से थैंक यू कहते आए हैं, क्यों हम अपनी नदी को थैंक यू कहना भूल गए हैं और क्यों हमें उसको थैंक यू कहना चाहिए। तो इस नई पीढ़ी से उम्मीद है उनको जोड़ने के लिए ये एक ऐसी कोशिश हम कर रहे हैं। एक बार पुनः आप सभी का बहुत धन्यवाद।
धन्यवाद मिश्रा जी एंड कंग्रेचुलेशंस अगेन। अब हम अपने अगले EMM विनर के बारे में बात करेंगे। हमारे अगले विनर हैं श्री अथर परवेज जी। The organizing committee of the India Rivers Week has great pleasure in awarding the Anupam Mishra Memorial Medal 2021 to Shri Athar Parvez in appreciation of his journalism on the rivers of Jammu and Kashmir. For more than a decade, Athar Parvez has reported with great insight and courage on the various issues related to rivers. His writings have addressed river pollution, sand mining, encroachment on floodplains, as well as the impact of dams and hydropower projects. His work has also helped create awareness about the vital ecological links between rivers and wetlands, and how floods ensue when the relationship is severed. His journalism makes a compelling case for respecting natural limits, especially in the context of climate change. Working under extremely difficult circumstances, Athar Parvez has succeeded in upholding the highest standards of investigation and analysis. This has made his sustained focus on rivers and the people who depend on them all the more extraordinary. It is an honor to celebrate Athar Parvez's outstanding efforts in continuing to work on issues related to rivers of Jammu and Kashmir by presenting him the Anupam Mishra Memorial Medal 2021. Atharji was not able to join us today. He has shared a video as thanking the jury. I will request if Siddharth can please share that video. Thank you.
Hello and very warm greetings to all of you. Let me begin by expressing my gratitude to IRF for instituting this award to honor those journalists who are doing some exceptional reporting on river conservation. I think it is a matter of great honor for the journalists to compete for an award which has been instituted in the name of Shri Anupam Mishra ji, who was one of India's greatest environmentalists. He was known all across India for his work on water conservation. And I consider myself very lucky that this year I have been chosen for this award. The jury has been kind enough to find my work worth appreciation, worth this award. I am also thankful to Sharda Bala Subramanian, my friend, who has been kind enough to nominate me for this award. And indeed, I am very grateful to IRF for this award. Towards the end, I would like to express my apologies for not being able to join you online. I had to record my comments for this. I'm really very sorry for that. It happened because I was traveling. I have been traveling for the past couple of days. So my apologies for not being able to join you online. And thank you very much again. Thank you.
Congratulations once again to the BPS and the AMM winners. I would now hand over to Shri Manu Bhatnagarji. Thank you.
Manuji, you're on mute.
Good evening, everyone. It is my pleasant task to provide an overview of the proceedings in the month of November, when we have held the preceding 4 webinars, which have brought us to this stage, to the final webinar of the day. So I would now go over to the presentation which I have prepared. And, yeah, so this is ground which has already been covered, the organizations which are part of the India Rivers Forum Consortium, and the work of the consortium, that is to highlight and focus upon themes which are connected with rivers, focus upon critical areas, which we have been doing so from 2014. And the theme for 2021, that is healthy rivers, fish and fishers. Now, these are all interconnected. If rivers are healthy, so will be the fish and the fishers too. I would just start with this slide. as I went about preparing this presentation, I came upon Francis Hamilton's book that was written in 1822. And in 1822, this compendium covered 271 fish in the Ganga and its tributaries. And at that time, of course, there was no photography. And so each fish was actually hand sketched, and you can see the elaborate detail. And there is a description of each fish in that book. And it would form a very good baseline study. So this we have this kind of data available. Was the condition of the rivers at that time. Now, this is in a nutshell, what the seminars have been about in this particular theme. So I'll just read it out. Millions of fishers and their families once had a stake in free-flowing and unpolluted rivers across the country. Now, when these healthy rivers have declined over the decades through various forms of intervention by dams and barrages, abstractions of water, and introduction of waste, then the habitats have deteriorated, and ultimately we have faced a situation where the fisheries have declined, the river-based capture fisheries. And that is really the theme of our webinar. We are not talking about marine fishery. We are not talking about the cultured fisheries, that which is to be found in ponds, deliberately introduced, or in reservoirs. So, if we have good free-flowing river ecosystems, then only we'll be able to have healthy fisheries and sustainable fisheries. So this is a problem which we face at this point of time, and our challenge is how do we overcome the multiple problems which have arisen over the last few decades. So these were the webinars which have led up to the final culmination today. And we have discussed the polluted rivers on 8 November, then the captive rivers, which speak about the various fragmentations, and then the science and data and advocacy as it stands today. And on 20th November, we looked at the political economy and how it is changing as regards the communities which are involved. And today, the panelists will discuss governance and the way forward. Now, I did look at the national fisheries policy. It is still in a draft form. And I would just share with you that it is in its 6th iteration since 2017 and is yet not final. Now, India is the 3rd largest producer of fish in the world. But in this basket, it is not the marine fish or the inland capture fisheries which are making the biggest contribution. It is actually the cultured fisheries. And we find that there is about 28 million fishers and fish farmers in the country, but of that, about 23 million are those who are involved with capture fisheries. So, in terms of value added, the capture fisheries have a very small contribution, but in terms of the numbers they support, it's a very large figure. Now, the inland capture fisheries include a riverine length of more than 2 lakh kilometers, and that includes tributaries, main stems, irrigation canals, and it also includes small and large reservoirs on the rivers, and then also about 1.2 million hectares of floodplains. So the total area available for inland fishery is estimated at 8.24 million hectares, and so we have a fairly large area to cover. Now we all know that the urbanization explosion, industrial development, the flood protection and water abstraction which is going on, that has badly affected the riverine fisheries, and the reduced flow in the rivers apart from the pollution, of course, is not only affecting the riverine ecosystem, but is also impacting the estuaries and coastal waters. Now, we have various institutions and we have fisheries departments in all states. Fisheries is actually a state subject, and these institutions should have been in the lead in championing the cause of river protection or freshwater fisheries. But it has been seen that very often they have taken a back seat and they have allowed other considerations to prevail in order to allow the engineering interventions to take precedence, which of course have affected the free-flowing rivers. So we need to have free-flowing rivers right from the headwaters all the way up to their confluence with the sea, and that of course has multiple benefits which will accrue. At this point of time, of course, we are losing all those benefits, and we have to see what challenges we are facing and how they have to be overcome. That we'll be discussing today. Now, in the first webinar itself, it was discussed that rivers are not regarded as ecosystems. They are seen more as pipelines from which water can be extracted left and right. Any kind of engineering intervention can be made on them. So that mentality prevents us from looking at the impact on fisheries as any kind of consideration. Even in EIAs, fisheries seem to be a very a subdued consideration. Now, pollution has a very big impact on fish, not only on fish populations in numbers, but in terms of fish, diversity of fish, the growth of the fish itself, that is also stunted, and productivity of the river system is also greatly reduced. So average production is only 360 kg per kilometer of length annually, whereas the potential is as much as 1500 kg. This is an estimate which has been made by a working group in the 12th five-year plan. We are carrying out a survey of the Ganga all along the coast, and at many places we are meeting the fishermen, and every one of them says that the catch has really gone down and they have to spend much more time. They could earlier complete their day's catch in an hour or so, but today they have to sit the whole day in order to just make a meager living. And it's also been noticed that invasive alien species, which are more at home in the polluted conditions, they are making way into the entire composition of species, and ultimately they are dominating the native species. Because of the pollution, fish kills are being reported, even say from Krishna estuary and other such places. Pharmaceuticals, other chemicals, toxic industrial waste, they are making their way into the river waters, and these are sometimes resulting in mass fish kills. We have various agencies and organizations and laws which are which are concerned with the fisheries directly or otherwise, but we don't seem to have made much headway. Now, in the session 2, we covered captive rivers, and here the focus was on the fracturing of the connectivity of the rivers. We all know that dams and barrages are interrupting the longitudinal connectivity. Embankments are preventing the latitudinal connectivity, and vertically also we find that disconnection has actually increased. Now, when we have these kind of disconnections, we find that there is a lot of impact on fish. With longitudinal disconnectivity, you find that there is, the migration aspect. is lost, and fish have suffered. We all know the case of Hilsa. We also know the case of Masi. So these and in the case of latitudinal disconnectivities, we find that the floodplain, which also is an important spot where you have floodplain lakes, marshes, and which interact with the main stem of the river, and where certain species breed over there. All these are then lost when the embankments come up right next to the river. So these interventions actually jacket the river or interrupt its flow, and that has a very serious impact on the fish populations, the fish breeding, and so on. Even the movement of barges, lot of navigation is being promoted for cargo purposes. We know about the inland waterways, and even the movement of barges and the motors, that also has serious impacts upon the fish populations. Now, the role of CIFRI is also, it's the leading government organization, and CIFRI's role, that is Center for Inland Fisheries Research Institute. And CIFRI is actually on almost every project decision-making body regarding dams and barrages. But somehow it appeared that they have not played a strong role in asserting the case for fisheries and fishers. So that also needs some attention. One of the speakers also highlighted how dams are being decommissioned in the USA. About 1,700 dams out of 90,000, 90,000, they have been decommissioned in order to reclaim the longitudinal connectivity. Now, in session 3, it was examined, what is the state of data and the science. And it was, we of course know that we need a lot of very good research on which policy can be based. But overall, it was seen that scattered information is there. But and some research papers are there, but overall there is a lot of data gap, and therefore the policy in this regard is not really formulated well. It may be so for in the case of marine fisheries or maybe culture fishery, but in the case of capture fisheries, there is much more work which is required. Now, and that's perhaps one of the reasons why the national fishery policy is continuing to persist in draft form, even after the 6th iteration. Now, we do not have much data on many of the fish species. In Ganga itself, there are about 300 species. So where are they all to be found? What are their habitats? How do they move around? How do they interact with the system? We have very little knowledge. And similarly, there is an absence of on the invasive alien species and the extent of their impacts on the native fish. The impact of climate change has also not been studied on the fish populations. We do not have any spatial data which should be there for species distribution, for the landings, the communities which are concerned, and we would need this, spread over time so that we have a time series which takes us to what, points to the trends, what kind of changes are taking place. The tenure systems and the community rights, some of which are, informal, which are customary, not written down, these also, they have not been documented. Again, there is scattered information here and there. Similarly, the precise number of persons involved, the number of people who depend upon them, how are they doing economically in the changing circumstances, There are, scattered studies which point to, people migrating from their places along the banks to different kinds of employment because there's hardly any fish left. There are issues where, where there is some regulation about mesh sizes, what size of fish you can catch, various places where there are multiple species, different kinds of fishing methods, all this, and whether there is a need to transit to what is the new concept of harvesting, that is balanced harvesting, where instead of focusing upon size of the catch, you focus upon a proportionate number of catch from each age group so that the population remains balanced. There is a little idea about what happens because of the dewatered dry zones, which are just downstreams of dams. So, and the fact is that the fish ladders are either non-functional or they have not been provided for, or their effectiveness is also doubtful. Sandrep pointed out that out of 157 projects, only 6 had provisions for fish ladders. So really fish is not a serious consideration in the design of the hydraulic interventions. So it was also noted that the impact of small hydroelectric projects is as harmful as large HEPs. Normally it's thought, the impression is that small HEPs do not have much of an impact, and we all know that up to 25 megawatts, you don't need any EIAs for the HEPs. So, and it was further also noted that with these changes in habitat, the specialized feeders, they are declining, and generalist species, which very often are invasive, they are now dominating. So it was the context setting of that session. It was pointed out that we need spatially explicit data. The state of the scholarship and capacity in river ecology, this is also in need of assessment. And of course, scientific work on the composition of fish communities. All this, these are data gaps which need to be filled in order to form effective policies. And then the previous seminar, which was on the 23rd, I think, 23rd November. So here, the changing political economy was discussed. Now here, these initial, they are from the water policy, national fisheries policy, and they are worth reading because the policy in in terms of some assessments and statements and intentions seems to be on sound grounds. So here they say the demand for freshwater and estuarine fish by a growing population is now met to a large extent by aquaculture and reservoir-based fisheries. This has further marginalized the river-based fishers. Where river stretches are still being leased out for fish catch by the authorities, a mafia has grown around it, which has further marginalized the traditional fishers and compromised their fish-based livelihood security. Resultantly, the traditional fishers have been forced to seek alternate avenues to eke out a living. And lack of unity or strong community level institutions amongst traditional freshwater fishers have also contributed to an absence of fishers' voice or political clout. Now, it was noted that the present development paradigm is loaded in favor of privatization. And so what is happening is that community rights are getting eroded. Communities of fishers, they are getting marginalized. And many of them are actually having to work for private contractors, so that from the status of independent fishers, they are now becoming, they are now having to sell their labor. And because the poor state of community organization, See, unlike marine fisheries, which are highly unionized, well organized, and articulate, the riverine fishers are, the communities are hardly organized, except to some extent in UP, Eastern UP and Bihar, and therefore they do not really have much political influence. Now, here is some text from the draft National Fishery Policy, which I thought is useful. So here, this is what is there. The mission. The mission says to revive the riverine system and reverse the decline of fisheries. So the prime focus of the NFP will be to ensure that the availability of water flow is conducive to in the rivers and the tributaries. Now, a very good intention and a very sound objective, but see, the policy seems to just stop at the level of intention itself. Second, the policy will focus on improving the ecological health of the riverine ecosystem and curbing the flow of pollution from point and non-point sources into the rivers and the tributaries. I don't think there's any dearth of agencies who are busy doing this for the past few decades. And I do not see what leverage the fisheries department have to accomplish this. Reading out the last line, to ensure that the population of these endemic species is sustained. So all right intentions, let's see how they accomplish it. So here again, the mission says policy will meet the social and economic goals and well-being of the fishers and fish farmers. So 3 cheers for that. Again, in objectives, while the fishers and fish farmers will be at the core of the policy, protecting the rights of the fishing and farming communities and building the resilience. So I do not find this reflected in government policy so far. This is, of course, a statement of intent. And again, in the last para, you may see emphasis on reducing the vulnerability of fishing communities from the ever-increasing impacts of climate change-mediated global warming. So, chords are being struck. But this is where we stand at the moment. If we improve the health of our rivers, then the other things will follow. And summing up, so we would like to say that the restoration of healthy river systems is key to achieving the other objectives. We need to look at alternative ways of managing resources, and by which is meant that we may look at some amount of decommissioning of dams. We may look at certain manners of releasing the flows. For example, in Subansiri River, it was explained that the abrupt release of the waters from the dams completely changed the habitat conditions of the dolphins over there. And so that adaptation does not take place and the dolphins have moved. So we need to look at how we release the water. Could we be more gentle about it and so on? The need for expanding the database in both the scientific domain and the social domain, and looking at their interconnectivity, that's very important. The communities which are involved also need to be far better organized and thereafter more articulate in etching out their demands or their stakes. And all the researchers and policymakers, they certainly need to move into the field and partner with the fisher communities to understand their knowledge of the ground. So with these words, I would just say that we need to improve our efforts in all these streams and achieve better results, both for healthy fish, healthy rivers, and healthy communities. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Bhatnagar, for that very comprehensive survey of all the discussions so far on this subject. Now, in this final session, we have a remarkable panel of activists and researchers who have worked on freshwater ecosystems, fisheries, and people across a variety of landscapes. They bring to the session a depth of understanding and experience drawn from their first-hand knowledge of the issues confronting biodiversity in rivers, lakes, and wetlands, as well as the struggles of communities that depend on these ecosystems. I'm just going to quickly introduce them, and it's a pleasure to do so. First, we have Shripad Dharmadhikari, who is an activist and researcher and coordinator of the Manthan Adhyan Kendra that studies water and energy policies. Shripad's work focuses on dams, rivers, hydropower projects, irrigation, inland navigation, environmental flows, as well as the coal and water nexus. All of these issues are looked at within the framework of just, equitable, and sustainable development. Shripad is a graduate engineer from IIT Bombay, and he's also worked as an activist for 12 years with the Narmada Bachao Andolan. He's on the steering committee of the Forum for Policy Dialogue on Water Conflicts in India. Along with Shripad, we have Dr. Bashida Masar, who teaches zoology at St. Anthony's College, Shillong, where she teaches courses on genetics and ecology. Dr. Masar has studied the causes of pollution in Umiam Lake in Meghalaya and the impact of pollution on fish. As part of her research work, she's documenting, classifying, and working on conservation of animal species, especially fish, in the Remben area of Meghalaya. She's also involved in community-based fish conservation in the rivers of the East Khasi Hills in Meghalaya. Suman Jumani is a freshwater ecologist, and she's doing her PhD at the University of Florida. Her research interests center on applied freshwater ecology, hydrology, and conservation science. She's currently working on assessing the consequences of river infrastructure projects in the Western Ghats and developing tools to aid in basin-wide conservation and development planning. And finally, we have Pradeep Chatterjee, who has been associated with the fish workers movement for more than 20 years. Presently, he's working as the national convener of the National Platform for Small-Scale Fish Workers. So each speaker will present for 10 minutes. And I'm sorry, but I will interrupt you when you have 1 minute left to ask you to wind up. After the presentations, we will have the keynote address by Shri Rajiv Ranjan Mishra. Following the keynote address, we will have a 20-minute discussion. And so please post your questions and comments for that discussion using the Q&A button. I will now hand it over to Shripad, Bashida, Suman, and Pradeep for their presentations.
So should I start?
Yes, please, go ahead.
Oh, thank you. So, good afternoon, everybody, and thank you very much for this opportunity for given to us to share our understanding, experience, and insights on a specific issue, that is the inland waterways, inland navigation, and what are the impacts on the fish and fishing population. We are going to talk about that. I'm making this presentation on behalf of myself and my colleague Abli. While the main sort of theme is the impact on the fish and fisher people, because today's session is also mainly focused on governance issues, our presentation is going to talk a bit more on the governance and regulatory aspect of this, though of course we will also quickly take a look at what are the key impacts of inland waterways on the fish, but there are other people like Pradeepta who can also talk much more in detail about it. So first of all, a quick look at the National Inland Waterways Program. Of course, rivers have been used for navigation since centuries, but in the last 5 to 10 years, we have seen a big push for converting many of our rivers and river stretches into large commercial waterways, which will be operating huge barges, big ships, cruise vessels, ranging from 500 tons to 3,000 tons. In particular, in 2016, the Parliament passed a law and 106 new national inland waterways were declared. So that's a huge scheme. And this is of concern to everybody who's involved with rivers, and especially the riparian communities and the fisher people, because these waterways represent massive interventions in the rivers with many adverse environmental impacts. The impacts come from the construction or the creation of the waterways, and also the operation where large barges are moving in these rivers. A lot of promises were made when these plans were announced, grand plans were announced, and many benefits have been articulated that these will be very cheap and eco-friendly ways of transport. But our analysis shows that these claims are very questionable, and in fact, the viability of most of the waterways is, not, is doubtful. In fact, very recently, the IWAI, that is the Inland Waterways Authorities of India, has now kind of accepted that 63 of these 106 waterways are not feasible for cargo or for cruise, and 25 are feasible only with cruise and ferry or passengers, and 18 are feasible for cargo transport. So this is quite a come down. The problem is, in spite of this, we are seeing a lot of attempts to keep pushing this infrastructure, even though it is not viable. And also we are seeing newer elements of this like cruise and seaplanes. I will also talk a little bit of that in the subsequent part of the presentation. Now, these are many environmental impacts on the river, on the water, but we are going to talk here only about, focus only on the impact on the fish and fisher people. So first of all, fisher people are doubly affected by these waterways. And how is that? First of all, the fish population in the river is seriously impacted, because when you are creating the waterways, then you are doing interventions like dredging. Now, dredging is actually effectively you are cutting, or you're cutting a channel into the riverbed, and you are continuously dredging this channel every now and then. So you are directly physically destroying the habitat. At the same time, you're also creating turbidity, you're releasing toxins which have been deposited on the riverbed, and all this has big impact on the fish. The fish is also affected by the noise and the pollution, like oil leaks, leakage of lubricants, etc., which happens during the operation of these vessels. And of course, many times these vessels are carrying toxic goods and dangerous goods like fly ash, oil, petroleum, and all. And when an accident or something happens, then also this has a big impact on the fish. But apart from the direct impact on the fish, what happens is when channels are created for the movement of large vessels, then a lot of restrictions are being imposed on the fishing community. They are prohibited from accessing certain parts of the river. Often these are the best parts of the rivers with the deepest water levels. They are not allowed to access the areas around the port and the terminals and all that. So this is a double impact on the fishing community. At the same time, the nets which are spread or used by the fisher people, they are damaged by the barges and other vessels, and often they are also supposed to relocate from that entire area. So these are a whole set of impacts that are happening on the fisher people. But instead of taking this as one of the impacts of the waterways and then seeing how they can be actually addressed, the problem is that the whole planning and development of the waterways is being done looking at the fisher people and the fish as an obstacle. Just to give you a couple of quick examples. So this is the quote from an audit report of the performance of the inland waterways in Kerala, where you can see very clearly what is said. Fishing nets erected by fishermen, fisher people in waterways have been hindering navigability through National Waterway 3 ever since its formation. So it is seen as an hindrance. IWA has been pursuing the matter of removal of fishing nets. Accordingly, several rounds of discussion with the fishing community, they decided to compensate the fisher people for removing the nets. The payment of compensation to the unlicensed nets encouraged fisher people to erect such nets again. So, it is just seen as if the fisher people are greedy. The problem is, in spite of the compensation, which is a one-time cash payment, you are not replacing the livelihoods for the people. So they keep coming back. Such a thing can be seen again, for example, in a more recent document, which is a risk assessment and disaster management plan for National Waterway 1. It says that to assess the risk, you have to audit certain things in the waterway. There are several things to be audited. See, one of the things that is to be audited: obstructions affecting navigability, such as fishing nets. So again, this is seen only as an obstruction. It is not seen as how to, attend to that. Similarly, if you look at some of the FAQs which were brought out by the Inland Waterways Authority of India several years back, there is a FAQ which says, what should be the role of the state government in developing these waterways? And see, one of the things which the state government is expected to do, any obstruction in the fairway, that is the navigation path, by the way of fishing nets, etc., will have to be relocated by the state government. So again and again, the theme is fisher people are obstruction. Okay, now moving to a slightly different point. Because there is a lot of impact on the fish and the fisher people and also on the river ecology, one would think that there is, there would be some mechanism to take care of these environmental impacts when planning and creating the national waterways. But actually, this is just a picture of that. Actually, the current environmental impact assessment regime has been completely bypassed. So first of all, it has been inadequate. Because the current environmental impact assessment regime does not require the assessment, environment impact assessment of a waterway. Okay, because maybe when it was drafted in 2006, this notification, waterways, was not seen as such a big intervention. But there is a requirement in the EIA notification which requires any activity of dredging, ports, breakwaters, and harbors as requiring environment clearance. But this has been very, very, cleverly bypassed because the IWAI and the Shipping Ministry has put tremendous pressure on the Environment Ministry. There's a long history and sequence of how this has happened. We have done a detailed documentation of that. I won't go into that. Just to say that in spite of the clear-cut legal requirement, the environment clearance process for National Waterway 1 has been circumvented. And then the whole dredging process has been given exemption from environmental clearance. And then other national waterways, which were in the process of seeking an environmental clearance, like the National Waterway 5 in Odisha, are now they are saying that we also should be exempted from the process. And you also have dredging and other developmental work going on without any environment clearance in, of course, Ganga and Brahmaputra, but also in Barak and other waterways. And in fact, there has been a case which has been going on in the National Green Tribunal since 2015. And that case has actually really become farcical, because there the Environment Ministry is supposed to come up with a clear stand on how they are looking at waterways and whether they require environment clearance or not. But they are simply refusing to submit the required report which they are supposed to submit. And then we all know that the EIA notification is now being amended and a new environmental regime is being brought in. There, it is even further diluted, and the new EIA draft notification is placing all inland waterways and all its components in a category which it calls category B2, which means there is no impact assessment needed, there is no public hearing needed, there is no appraisal needed, and there is no environment clearance needed.
Excuse me, Shripad.
Sorry,
excuse me. Sorry,
Yes.
Shripad, to interrupt you, but you have 1 minute left to.
Okay, all right. So maybe I'll just quickly go to the last point. In spite of all this kind of, this thing, the IWIS says that we have, it's okay, even though the environment clearance is not required, but we are doing the environmental studies. And a quick look at the kind of studies they are doing will also show what is the, aim. So let's look at one study which has recently been conducted by IWAI, which is the study of effects of navigational activities on dolphins in the National Waterway 1. And a small quote will illustrate. So they say, vessel movement and the sound produced thereof and dredging activities will have some impact on the aquatic species of River Ganga. It may also have acute and long-term impacts on the riverine ecosystem. However, as cargo movement through National Waterway 1 is currently necessitated, the aim should be to reduce the impact of vessel movements, which effectively means we don't care for the environmental impacts because navigation has to happen. So everything else can just, be neglected. I'm going to skip a few slides and just go to just one more key aspect, which is that it is not only the barges and the big cargo vessels which are there, but two new interventions are also happening, which will also have big effect. One is on a massive scale, inland cruise, riverine cruises are being proposed and being promoted. The problem is, of course, the cruise is also a navigation, has also impacts like the barges, but the cruise, because it has big passenger contingent, and the sewage which is generated and all the other waste which is generated, has a big impact. And then the other thing is the sea. So these are some of the places where the cruises are being planned in the Ganga, Brahmaputra, but also in the Narmada, Tapi. And then the other big intervention is the seaplanes, where on a lot of inland bodies, including some dams, for example, Irai Dam and others, but also some rivers like the Guwahati riverfront and others, you have planned the seaplanes. The problem is the seaplanes and the cruises are not being subjected to the environmental impact assessment regime. So again, you are having big interventions happening, which are going to have big impact on the fish and the fisher people, and also on the ecological aspects of the river, but they are going to happen without the EI process. So last slide, quick recommendations. There is a clear need to have waterways and all the related components to require a environment clearance, and they should be put in category A with full EIA, full public hearing and proper appraisal. This includes seaplanes, sorry, that should be seaplanes, not seaplaces. Seaplanes, that is the inland seaplanes, and the cruises apart from the boats and barge and other navigation. Very important, planning and appraisal of inland navigation should place the interests of fishers and the fish and navigation on par and not opposed to each other. Fisher people and fish should not be seen as obstacles to navigation. Riparian communities, especially fisher people, should be part of all decision making around waterways. And of course, I'm just leaving you with some of all these issues which we have discussed in detail in some of our reports. Here is a view of one of our most latest reports, which was released earlier this year, and some of the other reports that were brought up. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Shripad. A lot of material there for us to reflect on and discuss. I would now like to ask Pradeep Chatterjee to make his presentation.
Thank you.
And Pradeep ji, if you can please limit yourself to 10 minutes, because
okay.
we're already
I don't have any presentation. I think that I will be shorter actually. But actually, many thanks to Manuji and also to Sripad to actually present. Actually, they have presented almost everything of our concern, of the fisher people. But actually, I think that only one thing is missing. That is the right of the fisher people. Why I actually want to highlight this thing is this, that you see that the small scale fishing communities, actually, who are they? They were there on the rivers from the time immemorial. Because actually fishing predated this farming, agriculture. So they are the actually oldest people actually using rivers for fishing, for livelihood. And when the humanity was in the stage of hunter-gatherers, fishing started at that time. But now if we look at the scenario of rivers, you will find that the fishing communities, especially the small scale fishing communities, they are the largest primary non-consumptive stakeholders of our water bodies, and also including the rivers. So it is very, very important, because good fish needs good water. You know, the fishing communities are the natural custodians of our water bodies, including the rivers. But you will find that in no water bodies, they are given the right to fish or farm fish. That is the situation today of our country. And when we talk about protecting our rivers, when we talk about actually giving some scientific analysis of how the rivers should be protected, what kind of conservation measures should be taken, when we actually go through the draft national fisheries policy, we had worked on that actually many times because there were many drafts. But you see, one thing is missing in all these things, that the right of the fishing community. And since they are the natural custodians of our water bodies, the O of our water bodies, including the rivers, is actually linked with their disempowerment, is linked with their having no right on water bodies, including our rivers. So that is the case. You know that in actually today, Rajkumarji was there. He works on the Narmada Bargi Dam there. You know what happens? The fishers there have a cooperative. They can fish there. They can take out the fish. They can catch fish in the reservoir, but they cannot sell the fish. The government has a separate contractor for that. And the fish, actually 1 kg of fish is sold at 32 or 33 rupees a kg. So that is the situation. Fishers have no right. So, and the fishers know when the fish goes down, fishers know the water quality is not good. And what about the situation? You see in our water bodies, in the riverine fisheries, you will find that actually India has a great length of rivers, its tributaries, and with its canal systems, distributaries. So it will be about 0.17 million kilometers of water body of these river systems. And in that, actually the capture fisheries in inland comes actually produces 3.2 million metric ton of fish, which is about 25% of the total fish production. So it is a huge asset. It is a huge resource, and not less than 10 million people, 10 million fishers are attached to this, directly attached to these riverine fisheries. So you see, because it provides us with employment, it provides us with nutrition. Our food security also depends on that. And because the fish is sold mostly by women in many areas, you see, of India. If you go to the northeast, if you go to everywhere, you will find that women are constitute the main fish vendors. So it actually helps in gender balance in employment also. So this asset is not accounted for. The government is out to sell out our rivers for commercial purposes, for all these transaction, navigations, etc., for taking out the river water for irrigation, for industries, for thermal power plants, and also for municipal users. And in return, actually, the river gets polluted water, wastewaters from the industries, the agricultural runoffs polluted with chemicals, and also the municipal wastewaters. So the fish is reducing, fish is coming down, the fish stock is coming down, and it actually not only hampers our fishing communities, it hampers our food security, it hampers our also nutritional status, and also the gender balance in employment. So my main point is this, that now when we see that the rivers of India are being subjected to excessive stress and consequent adverse effects are manifested in poor fish landing and loss of livelihood of fishing communities. When we see that the fishing villages on the banks of rivers or in the river basins are pictures of impoverishment and desertions, hundreds of thousands of riverine fishing communities have been migrating to other occupations and areas in search of livelihood. We must demand actually two things: the fishing communities' right over water, and including the river water. So that is very, very important. What does it mean? It means the fishing communities should have access right for fish resources in the rivers, and not only that, they also should have the right to protect the fish resources and the rivers. So these two things are actually very important, very, very important for us. And you know that we need the support of the civil society for this. We are fighting, you know, in many cases, we are fighting against this sand mining. We are fighting against this fish mafia. We are fighting against this mangrove destructions. We are fighting against this destructive impacts of these inland waterways. We have cases in NGTs, and those cases are being conducted with by some of our friend organizations who look after the litigations, our litigations. So, but we need more support. We need much more support here, and to protect our water bodies and to protect the right of the fishers, because you know, nowhere in the if you look at the national water policy, you will find that there is no mention even of fisheries or fisher people. So that is the situation. We are a much neglected lot, but we are the people, the fishers are the people who can actually save the rivers, because they are the natural custodians. They are the largest primary non-consumptive stakeholders of our rivers. Very correctly, Sripad has said that the fishers should be taken in. But I think that you see, if you look at the national fisheries policy, if you look at the inland fisheries acts of different states, you will find that nowhere it is given, not even in the national fisheries policy, that the fishers should be given their right, the equitable right on rivers to access the river fisheries and also to protect the rivers. So that is the main thing. It is the main problem we are facing. So that's it. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chatterjee, for reminding us about the importance of fisheries in people's lives, both men and women. I would now like to ask the next speaker, that's Dr. Bashida Masar, to make her presentation.
Thank you so much, ma'am. Thank you so much for having me. I'm so privileged to be part of this program. Now I will share my screen. Yeah. So I am Bashida Masar and I teach zoology in St. Anthony's College, Shillong in Mikhalia. So I'm going to talk about community-based fish conservation in Remben River in my village, in my state. So we all know about Northeast, and here is Mikhalia. And it is known, Mikhalia is known for being the wettest place on earth, and this is the river map of the state of Mikhalia. Then this picture is my village taken this year in July. You know, so why the idea of fish conservation or conservation of animals came to me is because of my root or my origin. Because I was born and brought up in Lapalang, in this very particular village, in which 40 to 45 years ago, you know, like we can say, like nature provided for almost everything. I have experienced eating all the wild animals, vegetables, fish, and so on. But then when I compared about then and now, those years are now too much of a gap or too much of a difference, in which nowadays the people in the village depend on food, like 70 to 80% of food coming from outside the states, especially fish coming from Andhra or at times from Bangladesh. So we can say that in the whole of my area there in the villages, the natural resources, mostly animals, mammals, have disappeared. So the cause of the decline in the population of animals and fish, you know, because of our origin, because of being tribals as we are, we were taught, you know, we were taught to hunt, to kill and eat anything, almost anything. But then because of the rise in the human population, the demand for food increases, and so it leads to overexploitation. Moreover, the waste goes unchecked, and there is also another factor, and that is climate change. because the people now said that there is less rain when you compare with the past years. And then there is also a case of habitat destruction because of mining, especially of limestone. So an idea came to me, born and brought up there, and now I am educated, I must do something. And so it is time to act to save at least few organisms, if not many, and to at least help the people to live sustainably with nature. And so the ideas that came to me, to document the aquatic fish diversity and abundance in the river, in that particular river in my village, that is River Remben, and to do a conservation work, and that is in situ conservation, which we have started. And to be able to do that, we need to sensitize the people. We need to involve the whole community. All the villages should be part of that, otherwise it is not possible. So to do that, we need to organize workshops for the villagers, the schools, children, then the youth group, the women group, NGOs, and so on. So in 2014, I started to document the fishes, all the species in this particular river, as well as River Remben. So I will show you those species. You'll see these are the fish species in Remben. There are 10 fish species, whereas in Borhir, actually it is the same river, but as it flows towards Bangladesh, it becomes wider, and then there are more species there because of the fishes that come from Bangladesh. So these are the fishes of Borhir. About 33 fish species are there. Okay. Then I documented all these fish species and then compiled together in the form of a book that we published last year. And in this book, I also documented all the knowledge, indigenous knowledge of the fishermen of the village. So from all these fish species, there are 4 of them that belong to the near threatened category. Those are this catfish, Cleptothorax tritus, then a loach, Balitora brucei, and the famous chocolate mahasir, and this catfish again, Walaco, are 2. So in 2016, we started, the workshop for the school students, in which we took them to the river. See, these people, the local people, the villagers, know about all the species that they know. What are the fishes that you will find in Remben or when you go to Borhil, that means the plain water body, but they don't know what are the species that belong to the near threatened category by IUCN. So we took them and then we taught them how to monitor, how to see, the flow of the water and so on and so forth. Then we also, we taught them how to measure and how to see for the river discharge and so on. We also took the students, in 2016, we took them from the college, from the town to that particular river to study the flow or to study the ecology of that particular river. Then in 2017, we organized a public meeting for the 15 villages in my area, in the village, for the village elders, the headmen, and the leaders of the different groups, the leaders of the SHGs and the youth group and so on. These people, the leaders of the group who talked on that day, they knew that, the time has come to act to conserve these species because, now they are almost all of them disappearing, except for fish and some prawns and crabs and so on. Otherwise, mammals and birds are not there anymore. But then they say that there is a big problem. How do we get all the villagers to be part of it? So in 2019, we started the CEPF funded project, and the name or the title of the project is Saving the Fish from Mekong to Mikhalia, in which, we work together with ETRI and Feral and Fish Bayou. So through this project, we engage 5 villages along Remben River to conserve the fish species by selecting or by choosing particular stretch of the river as a fish conservation zone or as a sanctuary. So I went, at the initial stage, I went to all the villages, met the elders, met the council, and then for them, it was not easy to convince, to tell them that we need to do this if you want to take part, if you want to be involved, or if you want to see fishes, or if you want your kids to see fishes in the future. And so they say, okay, we will do it. But again, they say that it will be tough to get everybody on board. So the project activities, we could not do much because of the pandemic, but then we organized this orientation program for the women group and the youth group in the village, in my village, La Palang. And then we did also the fish sampling before the inauguration of the fish conservation zone. And we did some studies and showing the villagers, telling them about the fishes, especially those who belong to the near threatened category. Then in the December 2020, there was a village darbar in my village. We could not bring the people from other villages to attend the darbar, but in this very darbar, only for the people of my village, I got a permission to come and give a speech. And together with the superintendent of fishery from the government of Mikhalia, we went there and we talked to the people. And then it was there that we could convince them that you have to do this work so that, you will be able to conserve the fish by giving or by choosing a specific site to be declared as a fish conservation zone. So in that particular moment or that darbar, the people, agreed that, okay, we will go ahead with it. So because of that, we distributed the pamphlets about the project, saving the fish from Mekong to Mikhalia, and then we give them the posters and so on and so forth. And then next, it was in this year, in January 25th, that we had the inauguration, official inauguration of that fish conservation zone by the people of the villages themselves, who selected the particular slot or spot where we can conserve the fishes. And so this is the particular river, Remben. This is our village. And then the site for the fish conservation zone it's a very short site, but very, very important, in which there is a pool in which the mahseer do breed. Then before the inauguration, the villagers, they did the cleaning of the river. And it is very interesting to share with you that, see, we put this, banner we fixed there by the side of the river, in which the rules and regulation, the main rules are there, are kept, but main rules are written here that people cannot fish anymore. By any means, they cannot do the fishing anymore in this water. They cannot also go and do, cleaning or washing the clothes and taking bath and so on and so forth in that particular stretch that we call fish conservation zone. So
excuse me a minute, Bashida.
Okay, adhere to these rules. And
Yes.
then we managed to, to do some work, like when we also installed this rain gauge and so on. Then we had a meeting with the council to find out, to see the outcome of the project. And so the village council, told us that within 2 months that we have started this program, we could see the fish swimming freely in this river. And so we did the fish sampling. And this is a picture showing the sampling, in which we engaged the fishermen to use the mosquito net as well as, the fishing rods. And after the catch, we release back the fish. And this is very unique because the fishermen told, this is happening only for the first time in Remben and never before. And that is very, very interesting. And one fisherman said that in the past, we could take, 1 hour or maximum 2 hours to catch one fish, or at times nothing at all. But now, after the implementation of this FC set, he took 1 minute or maximum 2 minutes to catch a fish, though small it may be. So this is very, very important. And I lauded the people of La Palang for doing this fish conservation zone. Then we thought that we will, will go to the other villages, but we managed to go only once to organize a meeting. But there they were willing to, to have the fish conservation zone in that another stretch of the river, but it was not, functioning because of the COVID situation. So I think with this, I would like to end up my presentation because of the lack of time. And then I would say that, the people of La Palang, they are really, taking this work, even giving that particular slot or particular section of the river, which they used to go for washing clothes for, taking bath and so on. But together with us, they declared that as fish conservation zone. And from there, the fish will migrate upstream and downstream, and we will see the increase in population much more in the coming years. So I thank the organizers, and once again, thank you for having me, and thank you all.
Thank you, Dr. Masar, for sharing with us this amazing account of how communities can come together and protect their local waters and the resources that they depend upon. Thank you. I'd now like to ask Suman Jumani to make her presentation, please.
Thank you. Can you see my screen?
Yes.
Okay. So thank you to the organizers of India River Week for having me here. I'm very happy and pleased to be here. Congratulations to all the award winners for all their amazing work. So today I wanted to talk about the role of science in decision-making in the context of rivers. And basically, when we think of rivers, right, they denote so many connections of different types and different scales. So rivers connect terrestrial ecosystems to estuaries and oceans hundreds and thousands of kilometers away. They connect biophysical and ecological processes to communities, human communities, livelihood, food security, and so much more. And they also connect, like through water, atmospheric processes, surface and underground processes. And so sometimes I like to think of rivers as these really nice umbrella ecosystems, the way we have umbrella species. But despite their relevance and their importance, we see that rivers are under threat everywhere. These are threats and problems we've been discussing through the week, through proliferation of infrastructure projects, pollution, water extraction and water stress, plummeting freshwater biodiversity. And in India, the situation is especially grim, right? Because we have numerous large-scale river modification projects, numerous smaller, undocumented projects like embankments, culverts, minor irrigation dams, all of which are really having a strong impact on our rivers. And why is this really important? Because the way we've had speakers talk about this over the past week, we see that when these projects come up, they cause fragmentation and flow regulation, right? So small dam like this can massively alter the river. These cause changes in biophysical properties. So you can have drying of riverbeds, stagnation of water, sediment accumulation, all of which have impacts on ecological integrity. So what you see here are migratory species. This is an eel that needs to migrate from the river to the ocean to breed. And here we have the Gunther's catfish, which also has to migrate upstream to breed. And these are images of these fish being caught behind dams and dying. And overall, this cascade of impacts affect the entire functioning of the ecosystem, right? And while we've spoken about the 4 dimensions of connectivity, there's a rising recognition of this 5th dimension of riverine connectivity, which is the social connectivity, right? Because rivers have acted as conduits for transport of ideas, religions, people, or languages over time. And there's also this I really like this graph of the relationship urban dwellers share with urban rivers, which is really nice. And I hope to see more of this kind of work coming out of India. So in India, where we have all these needs tugging at each other, we need to balance development, communities, and environment. And we have so many proposed projects. We really need rigorous science-based tools and information to help us make the right decisions. And this is often hampered in terms of data access, data limitations, scientific capacity. But also there's a general maybe lack of will for people to collaborate across sectors. Scientists are communicating with themselves, and lack of will to maybe engage in these efforts. So in a place like ours, an index-based approach is a really effective way to approach conservation planning of rivers. So if you think of indices, like perhaps you can think of the body mass index, right? So for your given height, if you plug in your weight, it tells you a value which indicates whether you're healthy or not healthy. So similarly, we have different indices to study how connected or fragmented rivers may be. And so we have indices like the dendritic connectivity index or the catchment area fragmentation index. And the main question we need to ask is, do these indices predict fish functional connectivity? So are these numbers which tell me, yes, this river is fragmented, are those numbers able to predict how fragmented fish populations are? And the good news is, based on studies we've done in the Western Ghats, that it seems like these metrics are good predictors of fish functional connectivity. And so it opens this huge scope of applications, right? One is just descriptive, visual. So this is a map of Karnataka state, and you can see existing and proposed dams laid out on the map. And we'll focus just on these west flowing rivers here in blue. So you can see that this little map here is the connectivity of rivers given the current scenario, given the existing dams. So we see River Kali and Netravati, where we have a lot of dams, show a high level of fragmentation, whereas Bedti and Agnashni have more connected rivers. And we see that in the proposed scenario, when all proposed dams are also built, how this connectivity is going to change over time. So these visualizations are pretty powerful in and of itself. Similarly, we can look at how connectivity changes over a period of time. So here you can see in the in the early 1990s, dam building begins in Netravati, but we see a huge spurt in fragmentation in 2005. And we see that if all proposed dams are built, as indicated by this dotted line, fragmentation can increase 5 times. So these are powerful visuals to just help us plan. People who know the river can see that the Kumaradhara Bisley section here, which is highly connected in today's present day scenario, if proposed dams are built, will become highly fragmented. So this could be of concern to people there. So that was the descriptive visualization, but then this information can also feed into actual planning or informing of, dam placement or other things. So again, this graph, it's just an illustration to show the use of science in making first level decisions, or rather first level filters, right? So here we see that at the current situation, all the existing dams on the Netravati River, they produce a cumulative capacity of 100 megawatts of power, right? And there are about 65 dams proposed for further development on the river. So through analysis like this, we can look at the impact of each dam, and we can start adding them to the river network based on lowest impact to highest impact. So instead of randomly, haphazardly going ahead and building dams, we can start ranking these dams by both their impact on fragmentation as well as the human benefit, right? And you can start looking at things like, okay, so to produce 200 megawatts of power, perhaps these 12 dams could be considered. Not to say that this is what's recommended to do, but it's just a better way to go about planning basin-wide conservation. So you can generally try to identify potential options where you have dams that can really have strong impacts on fragmentation or connectivity, but very low output. They may have very low hydropower producing capacity or very low irrigation capacity. So those are lose-lose options, and those projects should probably be red listed and not considered. But dams that have a low ecological footprint but a high human benefit could then be filtered and considered for more in-depth studies, like on-ground assessments, environment impact assessments, social impact assessments. And similar assessments of existing projects can help us plan or identify sites for dam mitigation activities or dam removal. It can help us identify sites to set up fish sanctuaries or no-go river zones. And you can see we've done some similar exercises for the Netravati. And this is a real-world example. So I've been fortunate enough to be working with the Nature Conservancy here in the US to look at dam removals and developing scientific tools to inform dam removal decision-making. So this is a map of all the dams on the Klamath River Basin in California. And there are currently 116 dams on the river, right? And they've spent a lot of money and decommissioned, they've broken down 7 dams as indicated by these red dots. But you can see when we use science that the impact of breaking down these dams on restoring connectivity was very low. So these projects have happened opportunistically. There's no real plan. But if the same resources were invested in breaking down, say, 5 or 6 dams, these few dams, the improvement in basin-wide connectivity would be tremendous. So this is the power of just using tools like this to try and, make decisions.
Excuse me, Suman, but it'd be good if you wind up so we can stick
1 minute. Sure. And so, like I said, surface water is really important. And so my colleague Pradeep Golgi has worked with me to develop this long-term data set to look at annual trends of surface water change over time. We've done it across 2 spatial scales for both rivers and watersheds, and we look at seasonal surface water, right? So this tool is something we're going to publicly launch in a few weeks. And basically any user can use the link to access this particular app. And you can toggle to select the basin or transects. You can look at what seasonal surface water composite you're interested in. And you can interactively click on any basin or transect of interest, and you can see how surface water trends are changing over time. Soon, we're also going to enable this data to be downloaded, so users can download and use this data as needed. These are some examples of the data. This is in the Krishna River. We have the Almaty and Narayanpur dams, and we see that these transects are really able to capture the whole trend of reservoir filling, dam operation, and even water extraction. Similarly, this is the Sardar Sarovar Dam, and we know that this is one of those dams that have been increasing over time. And similarly, this tool is able to capture that increase in surface water. And so just to summarize, going forward, science is a very powerful tool, rigorous science-based solutions. I'm very much aware of how science can be used to also package bad ideas, but it is a tool that has to be used with some level of judgment. Data accessibility and sharing are important issues to address for scientists, but scientists in turn also need to be better at communicating the science to other stakeholders. Establishing partnerships with local communities is very important, incorporating local knowledge, but also having them involved in defining study objectives or variables of interest could be very beneficial to everybody involved. And lastly, establishing collaborations with decision makers like policy makers, panchayat leaders, any decision makers would be very important so that science can then start creating outputs to address particular needs. And with that, I would like to end. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Suman. That was fascinating about how precise and targeted interventions can make a huge difference if they're based on good science. Thanks to all the panelists. And we now move on to the next part of our program, which is the keynote address. And it gives me great pleasure to welcome Mr. Rajiv Ranjan Mishra, who is going to be our keynote speaker today. Mishra ji is an IS officer of the 1987 batch, and he is the Director General of the National Mission for Clean Ganga, which is a secretary level position. Since 2018, he has spearheaded the Namami Gange program for integrated river rejuvenation, spanning the 11 states of the Ganga River Basin. And this is, as you know, a critical program which can be a model for the rest of the country. Mr. Mishra has been responsible for a number of policy interventions, including the ecological flow notification of 2018, and bringing to completion multiple projects for making the Ganga aviral, that's flowing continuously, and nirmal, and clean. He is making pioneering efforts for developing a framework for planning for river cities by mainstreaming river and water into urban master plans. He's also in charge of the National River Conservation Directorate for rivers outside the Ganga Basin. Mishra ji has been trained as a mechanical engineer from IIT Kanpur, and his vast experience as an administrator who's worked on irrigation, municipal administration, and urban development and infrastructure at the state level, and on disaster management, housing and urban affairs, and the training of civil servants at the central level, means that he brings to the cause of rivers a deep understanding of the challenges that riverine ecosystems face from urbanization, especially in the context of climate change. So we look to him as a leader who can bring about systematic changes to make ecological and social parameters more central to our governance process. Welcome, sir, and we look forward to hearing from you.
Thank you, Amitaji. And first of all, let me really compliment India River Forum for organizing this seminar, not just this seminar, but a series of seminars in this month. And I was quite fascinated to hear the panelists, and before that, Mr. Manu Bhatnagar also giving us an overview. But before we start sharing our thoughts, I think I'm also very happy, and I would like to personally congratulate all the winners of Bhagirath Prayas Samman as well as Anupam Mishra Memorial Award. Some of them are personally also known to me, especially Abhay Mishra ji, with whom I have some interaction at different times. In fact, his book has also sensitized me a lot, especially Dardar Gange book. I read quite often. I mean, again and again, you can read that book and you can just get transported into the real situation. You will feel yourself on the bank of Ganga in a village and what a villager is thinking about the river. So I think it's a very fascinating thing to see people working at the grassroots level getting recognized. Another thing which really, which I feel is very important is the theme of this dialogue, the series of dialogue, the healthy rivers, fish and fishers. Because as has also come very clearly from different presentations, and then several people have shown with very clear example, whether it is Mr. Dharmadhikari or some other panelist, that in many of our policy discourse or many of our program design, sometimes this element is not, this component is not given the due importance. I think so. That's a very good thing, because these series of seminars will bring, will really document the areas where gaps exist, and then where perhaps we all have to join hand. But what I will like to tell you, that the basic problem lies in our understanding of river. As you were telling, I had also a chance to work in a state where a lot of irrigation projects were there, and then I was Principal Secretary Irrigation. So the perspective of an irrigation engineer or an irrigation department about river is absolutely different from what we are talking today, or what I have been doing, or what I have been interacting and working in this my present position. I also had a chance to work in urban development department at state level and also here. So the problem is everyone thinks of river from their own perspective. Whether it is a matter of challenge or whether it's a matter of finding some solution, I think we all try to look at river from our perspective. And what is our perspective? We try to extract maximum benefit for us. So I think that's the kind of challenge. It's very difficult for people to understand river is a kind of huge system. I think river is not just a kind of channel of water which is transporting water from the source to sink or this thing. I mean, that's certainly one work which is doing, but apart from water, it's carrying sediment, silt. It's a source for aquatic life, flora, fauna, and several things. Then what constitutes a river also is something perhaps which we have to understand, and then discourse like this, because here we are seeing people who are knowledgeable, who have field experience, who also have scientific knowledge. So I think we have to basically jointly carry out this discourse, that how we can develop a kind of thinking which is more integrated, which is more complete. And we should not end up the typical story of blind men and elephant thing, which, I mean, they all thought elephant is this only. Because if we don't even understand what exactly is a river, how are we going to find the solutions and different kinds of options which exist? Again, another thing which we have to understand very clearly, that river does not belong to human beings only. Because often we feel, I think when you think from the point of view of other transportation or irrigation or any other kind of use, we feel that we have right over the water of the river. I think many of you very rightly talked about right of fishers on the river or the river water. I think that's a very right thing to talk today. But I will like to tell you even more fundamental thing. Do we give river right over its own water? Do we recognize that? Do we recognize river its own right over its own land? I mean, there was a discourse, there was a talk about in one of the seminar, you talked about floodplain. Now, what exactly is the floodplain? That's part of the river. and how we use floodplain, how we develop ourselves. I think perhaps we have to, and that understanding is, there is a kind of disconnect there. And then I think we have to improve that. So looking at river from the point of view of not only human being, giving its due, realizing that river was much before we all came here. It was there. It's a kind of boon of the nature. It was very much there. It carried its purpose. It's essential for our existence. And to have healthy river is not so much required for the river, but it's actually required for us. So I think that is something perhaps we have to start our work from that perspective, and then various things will come. I will tell you very briefly. I don't want to talk about Namami Gange program in detail because that's not the purpose. Neither that will be of much interest to you. But today we are talking about, especially in the series of seminar, today we are also talking about governance issues, and then more on the, let's say, fisheries or fishers. So I think trying to make little general, today we are perhaps talking about the community. I mean, fishermen is also one of the riverine community. There are other communities also. I think they all are important. So I think the riverside community, how they can be made sensitive. And in fact, I can tell you, I think in this group, all of you know, and then several examples came also, like the Meghalaya example was very, very clearly suggesting that once the community accepts and then you have a kind of fish conservation zone, things start improving. I can also give you several examples in my experience in Namami Gange, where once community is aware, I think I have got several Ganga Praharis or trained volunteers who have saved dolphins, who have also gone and fought with some fishermen vis-a-vis dolphin. I mean, that's also a conflict. Today we are talking of fishermen, but there is also a kind of conflict. We talked about fishermen and the mafia. I am quite aware of that. I think go to the Bikramsila Dolphin Sanctuary. You have the problem to dolphin, you have the problem to fishermen, and I don't blame fishermen because they also have a problem from the contract mafia, I mean, which is actually taking away their rights. So I think it's a very, very complex world, and then in which we function. So primarily what perhaps is needed to start with this understanding, and in our mission, we try to start working and coming out of the only mindset of cleaning. But you know, cleaning is very important. I mean, the water quality is important. Today also people talked about. But sometimes what happens, there are stakeholders who will say that why should we only think about cleaning? If we can improve the flow, everything will be taken care of. I agree. I think improving ecology and flow is perhaps the most important thing. But to achieve that is not very easy also, unfortunately. I mean, it's not possible for you to take away the irrigation water, which has been in, especially in case of Ganga. What Kotle did, the upper Ganga canal, which came in 1854 or so, I think there has been a right, there has been a kind of cultivation, there has been a practice. Slowly we are trying to work out, but improving water use efficiency in agriculture, it will be very good, but it's not very easy to do it very fast. So you have got to improve that. We started with environmental flow notification, and I think it needs to improve further, but at least a beginning was made. While doing that, it was not only on hydrology, we tried to bring in some keystone species also, like for their movement, how much depth is necessary. So I think there was a kind of clear expert committee, and CFI was also there. But I think I can tell you, we have started implementing that e-flow notification in Ganga. There were some problems in hydroelectric projects, one or two. I mean, most of them are now, by now, implementing it. But there was an issue raised, I think, by Mr. Bhatnagar, that a smaller hydroelectric projects also needs to be looked at, because normally in our policy domain, perhaps we are going for the bigger hydroelectric projects. How they will be looked at, what's the best possible way to do it is again a matter of policy, and then we have to do it. But when we start doing this e-flow analysis for the other river, Jamuna, we have already started the process, and a scientific work has happened, because as all of you know, I think what we talk about the condition of Yamuna River, without improving flow, it will be very difficult even if we complete all the STP. We'll have to do STP, we'll have to do that. I mean, there is no, I don't see a case where you already have a lot of water, so you don't clean yourself and you keep on throwing your wastewater. That should not be the case. We should anyway build up all those capacity. But what happened when we started designing this program, and there was one session was on science, data, and advocacy. I think I fully agree. unless you have a kind of evidence-based policy making, often we are not able to do that. I mean, we are all aware about that. But we try to do that starting with the consortium of IITs giving us a kind of Ganga River Basin Management Plan, which is further getting expanded or upgraded. We also interact with several knowledge institutions. Fishery is one of them, because today we are talking about fisheries, and so Fishery and Wildlife Institute of India. These two institutes I would like to mention here, which are a kind of expert institution. We also work with WWF. So I think with all of them, we are trying to do. There was somewhere there was a data. I think Mr. Bhatnagar showed us about Hamilton's book. He has been talking to us also. He also works with us on some projects for cultural heritage mapping along Ganga, natural heritage mapping along Ganga. So I think it's fascinating that someone by sketching by hand could document that. Now we have so much of high technology, so much of GIS, remote sensing, and I think we got one example through Suman ji about river connectivity. It's very fascinating index which they showed. I think we will be very keen to carry forward that kind of exercise in future. But with the help of Fishery and Wildlife Institute of India, what we tried to do, that why don't we do a kind of mapping of aquatic life along Ganga and also fisheries. Fishery has been able to do GIS mapping of around 195 fish species in Ganga. So I think that kind of documentation has been prepared. And then we are working with them about studying the migration of different fish species. And then while we were working with Fishery, I think an idea also came to study about migration of hilsa, because as we all know, after the Farakka dam, and we talked quite a lot about all these dams and how they change, I think absolutely there is no doubt that once you create an obstruction, there will be certainly some change. Now, what exactly is the solution? We are also not very much aware about fish ladder system and then improving their working and all that. And so we are also trying to do some study of the Farakka fish ladder and then to improve the gates, etc. But I think what with the Fishery we have started working, that let's also look at, there was a big debate whether, because hilsa has not been migrating because of Farakka dam, if we try to do something, whether the genetically hilsa will be in a position to come up to Patna, come upstream or not. But we have started a project with Fishery, and then by tagging those hilsa, so I think it's able to migrate, and we could locate them up to Patna, up to Buxar and all that. So I think, though small in number, but it's possible. So I think we are also trying to work on them. And with the help of Fishery and Wildlife Institute of India, we are also combining them. With the help of Wildlife Institute of India, apart from doing the scientific mapping of aquatic life, habitat and species conservation action plan, we have also ecologically trained volunteers. We call them Ganga Prahari all along Ganga. And now we have expanded to the other rivers in the basin also. So I think first we did on the main Ganga. Now these are the people who are from the community. And I think another very innovative thing which happened was also linking it with their livelihood, because many of them are also from the fishermen community. Many of these Ganga Praharis are also from the sailors community. I mean, those Mallah and then those who basically live on the river. So I think looking at this community and training them, giving them little confidence has also been proving to be good. So what we did, we told Fishery also that in your phase 2, you try to sensitize the fishermen also about dolphin, because I think unless all of us join hands and then bring all of them together, it will not be perhaps possible. I will also like to very briefly mention, there is an order, because we are talking a little bit more on the governance side. So there is an order declaring NMCG as an authority. It came by the end of 2016. So it's laying down some sort of basic principles of rejuvenating a river. If we rejuvenate the river in a scientific way, in a holistic manner, naturally the cause of fissures or fisheries or aquatic life or flora fauna will be taken care of. So it also talks, I mean, what today we have talked there, it also lays down the foundation, giving us power to notify environmental flow, assess the environmental flow and notify it. Continuity, we talked quite a lot. So I think officially there is a recognition of longitudinal, lateral and vertical connectivity, linking groundwater and surface water, quantity of water as well as quality of water. And it also talks about the, I mean, we also have taken several programs for developing integrated management plan of the wetlands, because we are really losing wetlands at a very alarming rate due to encroachment or due to the bad quality of water. And I think there was also a discussion about climate change. Perhaps forest and wetlands, they are our best tool to have a kind of mitigate and adapt to the impact of climate change. So I think that's very important. It also very clearly, our mission also very clearly says that people river connect has to improve, whether by way of having eco-friendly river banks, crematoria, or by developing community cadres, talking to younger people, especially focusing upon younger people, and then also bringing them into the mainstream. So I think we have to primarily from the policy or governance point of view, and another area I will very briefly touch, the urbanization, because I think we all know urbanization is going to take place. We are going to become more and more urbanized, but whether the cities, how they treat river, we take water and we throw dirt into the river, is that should be the paradigm of urban planning, or how we should actually make our cities water sensitive and river sensitive master plan. So I think we have taken up an absolutely different stream where we are talking about management of urban rivers. And on 25th, we had a very good initiative. We launched a River City Alliance. So we have picked up 30 cities. Most of them are in the Ganga Basin, but we have also picked up some 7-8 cities outside Ganga Basin. So it's a kind of, and it was done with the help of Housing and Urban Affairs Ministry and our ministry. So jointly we have done that. Idea is create a kind of forum, create an institutional place where all this master planning exercise, all those things will come. And that's again very important, that the urban wetlands must be conserved and must be kept intact to keep the river continuous, and river also, because the quality of water problem comes primarily there. So I agree that there is a long way to go. And as far as the fisheries and fishermen, their rights are concerned, or their involvement is concerned, perhaps we need to plug the gap in data. We have started that process, but I think as the discourse very clearly says, one department or one ministry will not be able to do. From governance point of view, as we have tried to go for the water quality part, for the sewerage part, let's say the municipal wastewater management, we are trying to make an approach of one city, one operator kind of concept, where old STP, new STP, they're all put, and then bring some sort of PPP and then give it for 15-year operation and maintenance kind of thing. So some long-term things for the first time we have introduced that. Similarly, we will have to look at integrated river basin management and integrated urban water management. These two things we have to look at. We have to look at the policy in a very integrated way. We have to, because now if you look at the fishery thing, the way fishery department works at the ground level and the way irrigation department works, I think there is a lot of, I mean, they have to be brought together. And what we are doing, at least in the Ganga Basin or the mainstream of Ganga, we have a National Ganga Council at a very topmost level chaired by the Prime Minister, but we are trying to operationalize District Ganga Committee. So at least at the district level, these issues in which fishery department, irrigation department, urban development, rural development, all these people can come together and work. See, Ganga is a massive river, but there was also a reference that we have to look at all the small rivers also, and all the small water bodies. And I think there was I think Abhay Misra ji was talking about a very fascinating idea to come with a kind of syllabus to actually talk about school children, those who are on the bank of the river, about the local issues, about the local water, because I think that will be really very, very fascinating thing to do. We are also trying to do some of similar kind of exercise, and it will be very good to basically go to the local level, look at the program level interventions, look at the other ministries which are also doing something, how it will impact the river health, try to broaden their thinking. As I told you, wherever we work, we are guided by the department's perspective. But what is the river's perspective and what are the river community's perspective must take over all other departments' perspective, and we all must become subset of that overall understanding. It's very easy for me to tell you in the conference, we all wish to do it. We have tried to do it. To some extent, we have succeeded, but I fully agree. We have a very, very long way to go. And only way it can happen if you create some institutional structure, which we have tried to do it, whether it is River City Alliance or having a National Ganga Council up to District Ganga Council. And last 1.5 years, I am trying to make this District Ganga Council very active by having more meetings, by organizing certain expeditions. Sometimes some public outreach campaign also energizes them. Like we recently concluded a Ganga Masal. So I think someone started with a flame on Ganga all along the river side. They went there. There was some ex-servicemen who also did some Atule Ganga campaign. And they walked along Ganga. So I think some of these things also help. Sometimes people may feel they are basically more publicity purpose thing, but it also energizes the community and brings administrator and community together, which is again not a very easy thing to do. I mean, you need a very different kind of mindset to work with people and then convince people to work. We have to have a great, we have to create a great knowledge institution. So we are trying to set up a kind of Ganga Knowledge Center. We work with several institutions. I think I will again, many of the people who are in the audience or who are present, they're also part of those institutional network. We have to institutionalize, we have to reach out to the universities. And then because there are several professors here, I will try to appeal to you that in university and educational institution, we must try to develop a kind of new discipline of river sciences or humanities, whatever you say, because understanding a river is a multidisciplinary thing. You need science, you need engineering, you need sociology, you need lot of cultural understanding, and all of them put together constitute a river. So there is a lot to do, and I don't see we have much of this kind of course anywhere. So I think we all study in our universities also in fragments. If we are in IIT, we will be studying civil engineering. Someone will study some other branch of engineering. But when it comes to looking at all of them, and then there's a lot of public policy issues also. So I think perhaps there is need to also do that. Recently, we on a small scale, we tried to start a thesis competition for planning schools. And I think to reimagining urban rivers. So I think what I said, so I think there's a very good response. A lot of very bright ideas came from the young master's students. And a lot of SPAs and these institutes, their lecturers and professors also got interested into this. So I think we need to carry all this discourse continuously at different level. The task is so big. Whatever we do at the end of the day, it will look much small, much less we have achieved. There are also lots of legal issues. There are also lots of judicial issues. We have to work collaboratively on various fronts, whether it is implementing EIA or developing good EIA code, which can do justice with river, which can do justice with the riverside community, their rights. And I will end with saying the key lies in going for the high-tech solutions like this connectivity index, these kind of things, along with the traditional wisdom. We started with Anupam Mishra's Memorial Award. If you listen to him, Talab abhi bhi khare hain. I mean, there are so much of wisdom he talks, I think, which our forefathers, our communities already knew. So I think we have to look back and learn from that instead of only doing high-tech thing. But yes, I think some of these index and all that, they will be very fascinating, because see what will happen, they will also help us in convincing the ultimate decision makers that what is good ultimately and what is not so good. So I think when we decide certain things, it will be more informed. And those who are willing to convince the ultimate decision makers, it will be a very great tool in their hand to go and convince them that we should do that. How many hydroelectric projects are good? What is the overall impact of all of them? Whether we should look at one of the HEP individually, or we look at a cluster of them and look at the environmental impact of that cluster. I think these are various scientific and policy questions which will come out only when we really engage with these kind of things. Once again, I think it was really very, very fascinating, and I learned quite a lot of things. And I also have now in my plate few things to carry forward, and then maybe carry out my interaction and communication with some of the panelists, that how we can really carry it forward in our mission. We are also trying to do some of the things which we are doing on Ganga, trying to create a kind of national river rejuvenation mechanism also. So how we can also carry forward some of these things to the other missions, other rivers. All rivers are important. Here we have an opportunity of a larger program with support of the government to be implemented. We have some flexibility to experiment, to do research work and all that. But the same kind of thing what we learn in Ganga should actually be carried forward to the other rivers also. So I think I really look forward to further collaboration. Collaborative partnership is the only answer, whether we are talking of today fisheries or fish related thing or other things. We have to understand river and respect river and water, and that the solutions will start emerging if we start understanding its true nature. Thank you.
Thank you very, very much, Mishra ji, for appreciating both the urgency of these issues, this wide range of issues, the need for concerted action, especially, you spoke to us about mobilizing around cities, a much neglected subject. You also talked about the need to coordinate across ministries and departments for also bringing together knowledge, both of local communities as well as different disciplines in the sciences as well as the social sciences. And you also reminded us about the wisdom of working with citizens, ordinary citizens and their organizations across who best know rivers and depend on them. So you have covered a huge range of issues, and I'm sure there'll be many questions and comments on these. Thank you so much. I will now hand over to Neha Bhadbade of Sopicom, who will be moderating the question and answer session that's going to follow.
Thanks, Amita. And we have a very brief time for the question and answer session right now. So, and we've had some very interesting questions coming through. So I'd like to upfront begin with a question for Ravi Ranjan Mishra ji, and it's from Ravi Chopra ji from PSI. And his question is that the NMCG's vision for Ganga rejuvenation commits itself to restoring the wholesomeness of the Ganga and ensuring its ecological integrity among other aims. But as Shripad Dharmadhikari has just described how the well-being of the national aquatic animal, that is the Gangetic dolphin, has been sacrificed to the National Waterway 1. So what has the NMCG done to oppose this tragedy? In the light of its commitment to ensure the ecological integrity of River Ganga. So did the NMCG file an affidavit to save the dolphins when a litigation was filed in the Supreme Court against the National Waterway 1? And again, similar question to that is by Parishtosh Tyagi is, in general, with respect to that, what is your view about the way river navigation projects are then emerging?
Very, very important questions. Both very knowledgeable people have raised. And Gangetic dolphin, the cause of Gangetic dolphin and its conservation, NMCG has been continuously raising, and as a result of our efforts, only a kind of Project Dolphin was also launched. As you have raised the issue more specifically to the inland waterways, the issue of environment impact assessment and these things also came up in the presentation of Mr. Dharmadhikari. And the MOEF is a party in that case, and then we have also basically joined that. And we have also taken up with the inland waterways authorities about the precautions and other kind of things to be taken up to protect the interest or the safety of the dolphins there. So it's at that stage, and we are trying from our side about sensitizing them. We are also trying to involve Wildlife Institute of India about development of a clear action plan and safeguards, etc. on that.
Raviji, does that answer your question? Would you like to ask anything further, or can we move on with the next question?
Well, I just want to say to Mishra ji that, you know, I've had a lot of experience of working on committees, making not only giving recommendations, but under the authority given by the Supreme Court, directing the executing agencies to follow certain norms and certain precautions. They are never obeyed. How are you going to ensure that this tragedy is averted? This is not going to happen by just using good words, Mishra ji. We need very strong action. Thank you.
Thank you, Raviji. So the next question that we have is for Pradeep Chatterjee. This is from Paritosh Tyagi. And he's asked that, will there be some duties assigned to fishers along with the rights under the fisheries policy? Sorry. Pradeep ji, please answer. If possible, try to keep your response as brief as possible. And I request you to turn on your video as well.
Okay. I have already actually written to her, given a written answer to that question.
Yes.
The problem is that, you know, every right entails responsibility. So the fishers are never asking for right that does not involve any responsibility. On the contrary, actually, they are very much concerned about keeping the fish stock, about protecting the fish stock and protecting the river quality, the water quality. That is why they are against every kind of destructive fishing and overfishing. And also their right involves sustainable access to the river water and also the fish resources, not a destructive access. That's it. Thank you.
Right. Thank you, Pradeep ji. The next question that we have is from Paritosh Tyagi ji again. It's for Suman Jumani. Instead of constructing dams across rivers for storing water behind them, has it been tried to spare the river by storing water in the gorges and bowls available in hilly terrains?
Thank you for that question. I specifically don't know of instances of water being stored in gorges, but storing surface water in off-stream structures have been part of traditional water management practices in India. I know here in the south, we have ponds and tanks that have been developed. You have constructed wetlands. So in water surplus seasons, when you have the monsoons, water is stored in these structures and then used throughout the year. So it's very much part of traditional water management practices, but I have not seen examples of these structures being used by mainstream government, like the water resources management and other authorities in planning for water storage.
Thanks, Suman. Now, actually, we do have some questions that are not specifically asked to any of the panelists. So I request any of the panelists who would like to take this question to respond. The first one is from Mr. Muruganandam, and he has asked that, can we propose and bring out a national database of fish and aquatic resources, including whole range of riverine and inland biodiversity? So rivers and season-specific data for trajectory analysis, planning, and could we identify the players and other stakeholders for this job? So do we have any panelists who would like to take this question? Possibly Pradeep ji, would you like to respond to that?
Can you repeat that question, please?
Okay, so he's asked if can we propose and bring out a national database on fish and aquatic resources, including a whole range of riverine and inland biodiversity, rivers and season-specific data for the trajectory analysis planning, etc.? And are there any specific stakeholders or the fisher folks that we can identify? It's a follow-up to that. Yeah.
No, actually, this
identify
kind of
key players. Yeah.
You see, this kind of it's a kind of comment. I think that yes, database is actually very much required. To develop policies, to handle the situation, to handle the problems. Database is always required, and it should be developed. But it should be developed not from the angle of only a professional administration, but also from the angle of the small scale fishing communities who are actually dependent on these resources for their livelihood. Because when a river dies, when it is hampered, the river flow is hampered, then the livelihood of the fishers is the first thing that is affected. So they know the best. What is the problem with the river and the river water. So their concerns should be taken up, and this kind of, actually I have asked that all these scientific exercises are important. They are very, very important. But who are going to handle this scientific data? If you deliver the scientific data to a government which is actually much more concerned about the commercial development and commercial profits that may accrue from rivers like this, river waterways, or also for actually allotting water from rivers for other uses, consumptive uses, then it is a problem. Then it is a problem, because this scientific data has to be handled by the people who are actually most connected with the well-being of a river, and those are the fishing communities. So that is why the primacy of the fishing communities should be recognized by our administration, by our governance. Thank you.
Thank you, Pradeep ji. Okay. We have one question from Velu Mani, and it is in terms of governance, what are the ways in which we can control point and non-point source of pollution? So would any of the panelists would like to take it, or I could also specifically ask this to Ravi Ranjan Mishra ji, being a part of Namami Gange, since yes. We are already looking at tackling non-point and point source pollution, which is a grave concern there. What is currently the governance structure for that?
I think it's a very good question. And while I was speaking, when we started, I will just share very quickly, when we started this mission, we looked at what happened to the previous STPs, which were constructed under different programs. So what happens, I think one governance point of view, what is to be done, you must again have very clear data of each of the towns and each of the cities along any river. So I think we try to build up in case of Namami Gange. So that is very important to actually have very clear assessment of sewage generation or any other kind of solid waste generation, and then the processing capacity or treatment capacity, and then have a very clear action plan and make it sustainable, which we tried to bring in by bringing hybrid annuity mode or bringing 15-year long-term O&M as part of the project. So I think there are several things, and also looking at one city and a kind of accountability for the city level, because unless you improve governance at that level, it will be very difficult. Second thing is also there, you have to also look at different solutions. Everywhere STP or network is not perhaps the most important solution or most desirable solution. So you have to have a kind of city-wide sanitation solutions, whether it is septic, centralized, decentralized. So I think what is suitable for a particular city, that planning should be there, and someone should be kept in charge for that. So that's one. Then for industries, again, I think perhaps there is a lot of mechanism, but you have to bring in some sort of transparency and use technology to monitor industries. So that's another thing. Non-point source pollution is little more difficult, because though it is not so much looked at, But here often we we ignore the agricultural runoff or the pollution or the diffuse pollution going into the river. And that is where one thing which we are doing or which can be helpful is to engage with the farmers and then go for organic farming. Again, there will be several problems in increasing going to the organic farming also. That's one. And then also making the village, this open defecation also has to be tackled, which is happening under Swachh Bharat Mission. So I think there are several missions, there are several state government initiatives, but governance point of view, you have to integrate them at the city level and the village level, and sometimes even at the regional level, and create some sort of body which will take care of all of them.
Thank you, Ravi Ranjan ji. There is actually another question for you. It is from Rahul, and it is nuclear power projects. It's in Hindi, so I'll read it out in Hindi only. Nuclear power project का नदियों और river biodiversity पर क्या प्रभाव होगा और इसे कैसे हल करेंगे? खासकर नर्मदा नदी पर बारगी बांध के बारे में है ये। उनका कहना है कि अगर आप इसका कोई साझा कर सकें।
कि नर्मदा नदी और उसके ऊपर स्पेसिफिक उससे संबंध में तो मेरे पास अभी जानकारी नहीं है, लेकिन मैं इसके बारे में, चूंकि मैं नर्मदा नदी के प्रोजेक्ट को डायरेक्टली नहीं देखता हूं, लेकिन जब भी ये किसी भी न्यूक्लियर पावर प्रोजेक्ट या किसी भी प्रोजेक्ट को अनुमति दी जाती है तो जो इन्वायरमेंट इम्पैक्ट असेसमेंट में इन सब चीजों पे भी ध्यान रखा जाता है, तो उसको देख करके ही इसको अनुमति देनी चाहिए। लेकिन जहां तक इस स्पेसिफिक प्रश्न का संबंध है, वहां के बारे में, उसमें कैसे क्या अनुमति दी गई थी, वहां की क्या स्थिति है, उसके बारे में मुझे अभी जानकारी नहीं है। लेकिन मैं आपको बता दूंगा अगर आप लोग मुझे इसको भेजेंगे इसको, और जिन्होंने प्रश्न पूछा उनका डिटेल, देन आई विल ट्राई टू गेट इट आंसर।
Sure. Thanks for your response. We'll get back to you on that. I think we have one last question, and that's from Dr. Sakuntala Gowda, and it's open to all the panelists. Can anybody give an insight, please, whether we need more legislation to cope up with our river and inland water, or we should develop an efficient body for proper implementation of our existing legislation? Can I direct that first to Shripad? If Shripad, you would want to go ahead and respond to that. This would also come in terms of the current infrastructure development that is happening and is opening up on different rivers. Yeah.
I think it's a very good question. I think in many ways, I think we have very good legislation in many cases, you know. So though I would not rule out completely the need for new legislation in specific cases, or when some new type of interventions are being developed, like for example, waterways or seaplanes or cruise kind of things. But very broadly speaking, I think for tackling things like encroachment on river bodies, riverbeds, particularly point source of pollution, we have a reasonably good legal structure there. What is lacking, and absolutely lacking, is the will to implement that. Yes. You know, so I think no amount of new legislation is going to handle that. So what we probably need to do, at least I think for, say, when you're talking about point sources of pollution and some of the things like that, then I think a much greater role should be given to the people affected by these things. For example, if there is a pollution, then the pollution affected community must have a role in taking action. You know, right now, for example, if you talk about pollution, the State Pollution Control Board has all the legal powers, and they will just keep issuing notices. Nothing else happens. Whereas if the community which is directly affected by the pollution has a right to issue an order to stop work of the polluting entity, I think it will make a big difference. So if those communities can be involved in a decisive role in checking the pollution and taking action, I think that will definitely have a significant impact in terms of controlling some of these things, and of course, it may also push the political will of some of the other authorities. So this is one thing I would like to say. Thank you.
Thank you. Would any other panelists like to add anything to that?
Yes, I should. Actually, I want to tell one thing that you see our legislations may be very good in actually their scientific layout and giving some stereotyped, layered administrative interventions regarding pollution, etc. But as Sipat said, actually, that is very, very important, I think, that all these legislations are inadequate because the affected people, and in this context, the fishers, river fisheries and fisheries is today's actually subject. The rivers have no space in legislation, in our legal system. They don't have any actually. They are not a legal entity there on the rivers. That is why everything is happening there, right from developing these waterways, national waterways, to actually imposing the protected areas also. A dolphin sanctuary, or some in Sundarbans you have tiger sanctuary. Actually in both these things, fishers are excluded. Fishing communities are excluded. So that is the main problem with our legislation, that actually the role of people is not there. The role of people who are part of the ecosystem is not there. So I think that our legislation should be overhauled. Actually, they should be revised, taking this in actually consideration by considering this. Right. And one another point regarding that question regarding dams, etc. on Narmada River. I just mentioned that Mohashir was the state fish of Madhya Pradesh. It is still the state fish of Madhya Pradesh. But in Narmada River now, you will not get in the mainstream. You will not get Mohashir. Mohashir has gone down. Only in the service canals you will get it, because you know the nature of the water has been changed from lotic to lentic. So that is the problem also there. So it happens, you know, the fishers are being affected very much by these dams, and before the dams are installed, fishers are never consulted.
Right. Thanks, Pradeepji. I think we'll take just the last couple of questions. One is from Bhim, and then from Manojji, who's here, Manoj Mishra. So question from Bhim is specifically for Rajiv Ranjan Ji, and he's asked that mechanized, unsustainable state government-sponsored riverbed mining is impacting freshwater fish species, including endangering mahseer in Yamuna, in Haryana, Cane, in UP. So are state mining departments taking permission from NMCG to carry out mining? How NMCG is ensuring riverbed mining does not affect fishers? So can you please respond to that? Thanks.
No, these riverbed mining under the Act and the provisions, the competent authority in the state is giving permission. And there are some instances where we have also constituted some sort of technical study and also issued directions in some specific cases to control or even to stop some of this mining. But primarily the mechanism is at the state level.
Thank you. Manojji, can you please go ahead and speak? Yeah. Manojji, you're not quite clear and audible. Can you speak a little closer to your mic, maybe?
Am I clear now?
Not really. Am I glitching, or is he audible to the audience?
No, he's not audible.
Okay, Manojji, can we try again? Go ahead, Manojji.
Am I audible now?
No, we can't hear you, Manojji.
Oh. Hello.
Yeah, that's much better.
Yeah. Okay. Sorry. You see, Bhim has already asked my main question, which is about the sand mining and how emerged as threat number one to the entire riverine ecosystem today, and how it has to be really dealt with in a much more serious manner by the state than it has been done till date. Otherwise, there will be nothing really to save. It is really very dangerous proportions that the sand mine emerged over time. I just wanted to make this point about legislation and the fact that while we have Water Act and it does has some reference to streams, in our legislation, really rivers don't figure. And it is very unfortunate that even the Constitution has kind of equated rivers with water. They are two very different things. While water is important for rivers, but river is much more bigger than water. So there is a urgent necessity to have a legislation that actually specifically talks of rivers as ecosystem, and how this ecosystem, while we have legislation for forest as an ecosystem, while we have a subsidiary legislation for wetlands, but it does not include rivers. So there is an urgent crying need to have a legislation which actually addresses the ecosystemic survival needs of our rivers. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Manojji. With that, I think we'll wrap up the question and answer session because we're getting very close to 7 o'clock here. Amita, over to you.
Thank you, Neha. I would now like to invite Himanshu Thakkar to give the vote of thanks to this very rich discussion and talk also by Shri Mishra ji. And over to you, Himanshu.
Thank you, Amita. It's indeed has been a very rich afternoon and evening meeting we had today. And I would like to first thank all the participants, audience, those who have asked questions and made comments firstly. I would also like to, of course, thank all the panel members of today, starting with our keynote address by Rajiv Ranjan Mishra ji. He gave a picture that Ganga situation is so much very reassuring picture of what is happening in Ganga. But if you see on ground what is happening, unfortunately, is that tragedies unfolding everywhere. And NMCG is not able to handle, at least not seem to be handling any of those massive tragedies unfolding right from Chardham highway to downstream in Ganga Sagar. I think one of the key message that came through all the 4 plus 1, 5 discussions here has been that there has to be a key role for the communities in the governance, because we are talking about governance in this panel, in the governance of the river, right from you are talking about the prime minister level to district level, etc. But where is the role for the communities and also independent, credible, independent voices? I don't see any role for credible, independent voices in your governance system. If you get role for them, both for the communities and the credible, independent voices into the governance system at every level, that will possibly help you achieve the cause that you want to achieve. You yourself said you're a long way from what you want to achieve. So that difference between the situation today and where you want to go can be bridged through these ways. I hope that message that has come through goes through and there is some implementation of that. All the panel members I would like to thank. They have been fantastic. Sripad Dharmadhikari, Dr. Bashira Masar, Suman Jumani and Pradeep Chatterjee. Amita has conducted the whole meeting so well. It looks so easy, but it's not that easy. I would like to thank Meher Puri for the BPS and AMM presentation. Along with that, I would like to congratulate all the winners of BPS, very deservedly winners of BPS and AMM. And along with that, I would like to thank the jury of the BPS and AMM, because they are the people who went through the various nominations and came through the decision. There are many other people we would like to thank for all the 4 previous panels, all the panel members and audience and everyone who presented there. There are a lot of people who have been working behind the scene. Siddharth is here in front of us, but he has been working throughout very well to achieve what is, and along with Neha Badbade, Manu Bhatnagarji has made a very good presentation of all the 4 panels, so he should be thanked. Manoj Mishra ji, he has been leading the whole steering committee in ensuring this event in very difficult circumstances of COVID and other tragedies that we have all been facing. So we would really like to thank Manoj Mishra for ensuring this successful event. I hope I am not missing, but if I am missing anyone in thanking, please forgive me. All the 10 organizations who are part of the steering committee also needs to be thanked. Lastly, I would like to end with a message that last year we talked about impact of sand mining or rivers, and this year we have taken a specific issue of fisheries, healthy river fish and fisheries, fisher folks. And in both the all the panel discussions in both the years, the central theme has always been there is an urgent need for role for the communities who are directly impacted by the various actions that happen which adversely affect them. That's the central message I remember came out through last year in every one of the panel, right from administrator to the researchers, to the community leaders, to the media, to the government bodies and so on. And that's a similar message that is coming through this year also. But we don't have a roadmap, unfortunately. How are we going to achieve that? I hope we all need to work in that direction. With that, I would like to end this thank you note. I hope if I missed anyone, please forgive me. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Himanshu, for delivering the thank you note. I would like to just say again, thanks to everybody who has made this possible, this event from which we learn so much, which gives us energy and a sense that things are indeed possible to work towards a better world, to work towards healthier rivers. Thank you all and good night, and hope to see you again definitely next year, but if not before that.